Chapter 1158. Under the effect of the miraculous time and space wheel array, everyone was pulled out of the ocean world by the light pillar and arrived at the endless void precinct outside the colossal world. Although the sky great sage was heavily injured, he was still able to survive in the void turbulence. He flew at an extremely fast speed, wanting to break through the giant light pillar. The Baifeng great sage, who was fighting with him, did not take the opportunity to pursue him. Instead, he opened the door of convenience and let him leave. The Zhu Jian great sage, the revolving turtle great sage, and the Fei great sage did not intend to stop him. Although this would leave some trouble in the future, the Zhu Jian great sage, the Baifeng great sage, and the other's target was undoubtedly Wang Lin. The sea sage had already lost the ring, and it was now in Wang Lin's hands. Naturally, the Zhu Jian great sage and the other great demon's first target was him. Without the sea sage's interference, the Baifeng great sage was free to further increase the strength of his side, and the pressure on Wang Lin and the others increased. With this, Wang Lin and the other situation became more and more difficult. Without any communication, the Baifeng great sage took on the Tsang Tiandao Jian's attack for the revolving turtle great sage and fought with the Tsang Tiandao Jian. The revolving turtle great sage did not go to help the great sage Zhu Jian and the great sage Fei. Instead, he once again spread out his space rampart. Layer upon layer, he built a barrier inside the wondrous time and space wheel array, trapping everyone in the center. This was to cut off Wang Lin's escape route. The sea sage could escape, but Wang Lin could not. At least, he could not leave with the ring. It was not impossible for Wang Lin and the others to break through the space barrier. However, under the situation where the Zhu Jian great sage and the other great demons were attacking, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven if they had to divert their attention to open a path. As his supernatural power and demonic power continued to recover, great sage Zhu Jian's attacks became more powerful. Turbid wave demonic arrows flew toward Wang Lin one after another. At the same time, he leaped and began to approach Wang Lin. After the battle, just now, not only had Wang Lin's arm been torn apart by the turbid wave demonic arrow, but his ancient and modern world divine art and bridge of helplessness had also been damaged to the foundation of his Tao. He wouldn't be able to use them for a short period of time. This made it much more difficult for him to dodge the turbid wave demonic arrow. If not for the seemingly calm, but actually domineering netherworld true water sweeping across the sky, he would have been injured by the turbid wave demon arrow again. Losing the bridge of helplessness also caused his speed to decrease greatly, and the great sage Zhu Jian continued to close in on him. Looking at the great sage Zhu Jian and the great sage revolving turtle in front of him, Wang Lin's expression was calm, and his eyes flickered faintly. Due to the obstruction of the wonderful time and space wheel array, Wang Lin and the others temporarily lost contact with Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng vaguely sensed something. This feeling seems to be a very powerful force that is shaking the void of the Ying Sea. Who is it? As Lin Feng thought to himself, he looked up. The great sage Zhu Jian and the great sage Heavenly Wolf don't have this ability. Could it be her? Lin Feng's main body was currently sitting on Yujing Mountain, in the sky above the Spirit Abyss mountain range of infinite wilderness. Below him was the ancestral land of the primordial demonic ape. Demonic aura soared into the sky, and groups of demons danced wildly, continuously attacking Yujing Mountain. At that moment, something else appeared in the air above Yujing Mountain. 12 huge light pillars formed a circle, as though they were isolating the world. They extended from the sky above and enveloped Yujing Mountain. The yin-yang life and death array that Ding of Shenzhou was presiding over had already shifted to the sky above Yujing Mountain, blocking the 12 light pillars and preventing them from landing on the mountain. Lin Feng looked at this scene expressionlessly. 12 sacred heavens life and death array. Furthermore, it was not a projection of power, but the true 12 sacred heavens life and death array. An extremely powerful aura emanated from it, and the light shadows of the 12 top demon races floated in the 12 light pillars. The sky above had already broken open, revealing the dark void. In this void, a figure was looking down at Lin Feng and Yujing Mountain. It was a figure that seemed to be hidden in a chaotic fog. It looked like a human, but its specific appearance could not be seen at all. It was the Enchantress. The person who was currently here was not the dermic power projection of the Enchantress, but her main body. She had descended here and activated the 12 sacred heavens life and death array to appear in front of Lin Feng. She clapped her palms gently, and a dark cloud suddenly appeared above her head. It looked only about an acre in size, but it gave off a feeling of infinite power. As the dark cloud swayed, streams of light surged from within. It was as though lightning was shuttling through the thunderclouds, but it was silent. However, it was even more terrifying than the thunderclouds and lightning. It was suffocating. The streams of light surged out from the dark cloud and landed on the surrounding 12 light pillars. These light pillars immediately became more dazzling. In the void in the middle of the light pillars, large numbers of light patterns appeared and gathered together. It was like a sparkling sea of clouds that filled the entire sky. Countless rays of light shuttled between the heaven and earth. Among the 12 pillars of light, 4 of them grew brighter and thicker. The demon light shadows in these 4 light pillars were the primordial sky dragon, the heavenly demon ape of the primordial demon ape race, the primordial black tortoise, and the Kuan Peng. The golden primordial sky dragon was hidden in the auspicious clouds with a dragon's might. The dragon's head and tail could not be seen, but the majestic power of its flesh and blood emanated from it. It was as though it could shatter the heaven and earth with a swipe of its claws or tail. And a black giant ape the size of a mountain glared at the sky with a pair of blood-red eyes. It let out a deafening roar as the power of its body shattered everything in the void. Silently, a giant tortoise lay there. It was as heavy as an abyss in the earth. Its size was so huge that be it the revolving tortoise, Tibetan tortoise, or mysterious underworld tortoise, none of them could compare to it. Although it was just a light shadow in the light pillars, if one did not shrink the void and leave the light pillars to reveal its true body, it would no longer be an island or a mountain. It would be like a floating continent. This was the long-extinct, pure-blooded black tortoise. However, because its blood essence had been absorbed by the demon array, it had reappeared in the 12 sacred skies flower net array. And in the 4th light pillar was a Kuan Peng. It seemed to be constantly bobbing up and down in the primordial universe. Sinking was a fish. It was completely black and incomparably huge. Its body was thousands of kilometers long. Floating was a bird. Its feathers were green, and it had a golden beak. There were white feathers on the top of its head. When it spread its wings, it was thousands of kilometers wide. At this moment, the light shadow of the Kuan Peng shook its body. It stopped bobbing up and down. Instead, it fixed itself in the form of a koan. Its heavy body chi and blood immediately spread out. It was not inferior to the great demons of the other 3 clans. Apart from the carrying sky ant and the primordial divine elephant, the demon clan with the strongest physical strength had all gathered here. The low and hoarse voice of the enchantress sounded between heaven and earth. The syllables were strange and did not sound like a human language. Sky-shaking, earth-shaking flower net array. The other 8 light pillars had already gradually disappeared. Only the 4 light pillars illuminated the heaven and earth. Then, the 4 light pillars gradually gathered together and turned into an extremely huge light pillar. It pressed down on the yin and yang life and death formation and Jing Mountain. On the divine abyss mountain range, the great sage and Zhu Yin were expressionless. They stared at the sky-reaching demonic ape and the divine monkey in the light pillar. There was no anger on their faces, but neither did they feel happy that the enchantress had come to their aid. However, while the enchantress was activating the demon formation, the great sage and Zhu Yin did not hold back. They still activated the power of the divine abyss mountain range and firmly entangled Lin Feng. buying time for the enchantress to set up the formation. When the sky-shaking, earth-shaking flower net array was completely activated, the majestic power that seemed to be able to forcibly crush the boundless world made the yin and yang life and death formation, which was under the command of Ding of Shinjo, unstable. In the air, an extremely thick pillar of light pressed down tightly on a world of light formed by a huge matrix. The power of the domain continued to shatter and press down, and this world of light was pressed down by the pillar of light until it slowly descended from the sky, continuously falling towards Yujing Mountain below. It's not easy for you to find the real blood of black tortoise left behind from the primordial age. On Jing Mountain, Lin Feng's expression did not change. He pinched the incantation gestures with both hands and pointed his fingers lightly. The changes of heaven and earth in the yin and yang life and death formation operated in reverse, turning the heavy power that Ding of Shinjo used to suppress the earth upward. It turned into an indestructible and indestructible sky that forcibly withstood the falling light pillar. At the intersection of the two sides, heaven and earth seemed to be turned upside down. The sky was below, and the earth was above. The power of boundaries was distorted to the extreme. In the demon formation, the dark clouds above the enchantress's head gradually dispersed and fell toward Jing Mountain below. The yin and yang life and death formation was suppressed by the sky-shaking, earth-shaking flower net array and could not stop it. The enchantress could only watch as the dispersed dark clouds drifted toward Jing Mountain. Lin Feng's eyes turned slightly cold. "My fellow Taoist Tianmei, do you want to fight me today?" He held the index and middle fingers of his right hand together like a sword and triggered the heaven punishment sword formation to cut away the dark clouds. The enchantress said in a low voice, "The master of the celestial gate is extremely powerful. Now is not the time for me to fight you to the death. However, I have to fight you for the ring on the Thunder Abyss Goldenrock's hand." As he spoke, the enchantress did not continue to exert force. However, the upward impact of the spirit abyss mountain below Jing Mountain had begun to destabilize Jing Mountain. The great sage and great Saint Zhuyan were wary of Lin Feng's heaven punishment sword. Although they did not use their full strength, they cooperated with the enchantress, causing Lin Feng to fall into a pincer attack. On Infinite Wasteland, there was a strange scene. On the ground was the huge spirit abyss mountain, while in the sky was a thick beam of light that pierced through the void. The two of them sandwiched Jing Mountain in the middle, pressing it from top to bottom. Sitting on the mountain, Lin Feng's expression gradually became solemn, but his eyes were still calm. He suddenly asked the enchantress a question that seemed to have nothing to do with the current situation. "As far as I know, the killing prison wolf is still in Infinite Wasteland and has not gone to Yingxi." The enchantress did not answer, but his eyes were shining. Silently, Lin Feng said, "The golden rock was killed by you. The peacock's whereabouts are unknown, and Xiongqi has long been killed by me. The black void golden rock will not surrender to you easily. Even if you have the forces of the golden rock great saint, there should only be the Zhu Jian, the revolving tortoise, the Fei, and the Bai Fong and Yingxi right now, right?" He glanced at the enchantress and said, "If there are no other unknown experts under your command, then you will not be able to get that ring." The enchantress's eyes narrowed slightly. Lin Feng said indifferently, "Because it is in the hands of my disciple, Wang Lin." Chapter 1159. In the vast land of Infinite Wasteland, Yujing Mountain was under pressure from the divine Abyss Mountains and the 12 Sacred Heavens array. It was already in a precarious situation. The enchantress, the great sage, and Zhuyan great sage were three great demons in the Dharma ending realm. The other party had the help of the ancestral land of the apes, the divine Abyss Mountains, and the 12 Sacred Heavens array. Even Lin Feng felt some pressure. The white, jade-like, auspicious clouds around Yujing Mountain spread out, blocking the demonic atmosphere of the divine Abyss Mountains that kept rushing up. Ding of Shinjo was suppressing the yin and yang life and death array, supporting the falling giant light pillar with the power of heaven and earth. But Lin Feng's gaze was still calm, leisurely looking towards the distant end of the void. Thanks to that karma debate, other than improving and perfecting the path of karma of Buddhism, it also allowed Lin's understanding and cultivation of the great Tao of heaven and earth to become even more profound. In terms of the comprehension of the true yin and yang origin scripture, currently amongst my disciples, he probably has the deepest understanding. Little Linny has confirmed his way of yin and yang, and has successfully taken the first step on this foundation. It's really worthy of celebration. Perhaps he wasn't clear before, but under the heavy pressure brought by the enemy, it will help him to build a solid foundation. The enchantress naturally did not know what Lin Feng was thinking. However, Lin Feng's words just now made her feel slightly awestruck. Her intuition told her that the situation might develop beyond her expectations. Almost subconsciously, the enchantress sent a voice transmission to the heavenly wolf great sage, ordering him to find a way to rush over to the great sage Zhu Jian and the other great demons as soon as possible. At this moment, outside the Ying Sea, outside the Kiliacosm, in the void beyond the heavens, the revolving turtle great sage was opening a space boundary, sealing the void. In this space boundary, Wang Lin faced the great sage Zhu Jian. He took a deep breath, and his entire body suddenly shed his human form, turning into a huge Taiji diagram of the netherworld. On this Taiji diagram, there seemed to be a huge netherworld. Layers of light and shadow flickered. At the end of the black and yellow road, a dim river flowed silently. Above the river stood an ancient black stone bridge. At one end of the black stone bridge, there was a city-like hall. The door of the hall was open, and two wheels, one black and one white, kept spinning. In the depths of the hall stood a flat, mirror-like stone. It was Wang Lin's incarnation of his Yuan spirit. However, a crack had appeared on one corner of the netherworld Taiji diagram of the Taiji diagram of the netherworld, and the ancient black stone bridge in the netherworld had also cracked. These were the marks left by the turbid wave demon arrow. The Taiji diagram of the diagram of the Taiji diagram of the Taiji diagram of. Seeing this, great sage Zhu Jian's eyes were still calm and cold, but they became even more serious. Dazzling starlight began to appear on his body, as if stars were condensing in his huge body, causing his power and aura to become even stronger. The turbid wave demon arrow appeared on his right claw again. He knocked the bow and pulled the bowstring. A muffled sound shook the surroundings. At the tip of the arrow of light, a dot of Zhou-Zhou's starlight became more and more dazzling. The tip of the arrow seemed to carry the power of the stars. When the arrow was released, a star fell to the ground. The great sage Zhu Jian's supernatural power was special. He had reached the realm of star-soul fusion. He had sacrificed the stars and the demon soul to fuse. However, he would not use it under normal circumstances. This was because if he used the power of the stars he had sacrificed, a turbid wave demon arrow would be shot out like a star. To the great sage Zhu Jian, this would be a permanent loss. He would need to sacrifice the stars again. Therefore, the great sage Zhu Jian would not use this method easily. If it were not for the turbid wave demon arrow, he would be at a disadvantage against other great demons of the same realm. However, such a huge price would be exchanged for a powerful attack that most cultivators of the same realm could not resist. If he was not confident, the great sage Zhu Jian would not waste the stars he had sacrificed so much to train. Once the arrow was released, it would draw blood and take the opponent's life. For the sake of your master, hand over the ring, and I will let this matter rest. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee that I will spare your life. The great sage Zhu Jian said coldly. If you continue to resist, I can only shoot you to death here today. Wang Lin did not answer. Slowly, the netherworld Tai Chi diagram spun. The aura of his supernatural power became more profound and ethereal. Seeing this, the great sage Zhu Jian nodded. Tell your master to prepare to collect your corpse. Then, the great sage Zhu Jian's aura changed. The starlight surrounding him burned in large amounts and turned into rolling streams of light that gathered in the great sage Zhu Jian's single eye. His eye was emotionless. It was as if he was staring at a dead person. He looked at the netherworld Tai Chi diagram formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit. Somehow, there seemed to be a strange feeling that locked onto Wang Lin. It surpassed the barriers of space and time. It broke through all kinds of illusory concealment and went straight to the root. It was hard to block and hard to avoid. This strange feeling triggered the light arrow that the great sage Zhu Jian placed on the big bow to connect with Wang Lin. It was as if as long as the arrow was released, it was destined to hit Wang Lin's primordial spirit. This was indeed another of the great sage Zhu Jian's strange supernatural powers. It required him to burn his own supernatural power and sacrifice the power of the stars in exchange for the ability to lock onto the target. The price was great, but the reward was even greater. The great sage Zhu Jian stared at Wang Lin. Suddenly, his single eye closed. At this moment, the turbid wave demon arrow left the bow and was released. After the arrow was released, the light arrow disappeared. When it reappeared, it was already in front of the netherworld Tai Chi diagram formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit. The bright stars first became incomparably dazzling. It was as if they had burned all their light and heat in an instant. Together with the light arrow, a powerful force erupted and swept across the netherworld above the Taiji diagram, formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit. The Yellow Springs path continued to shatter and crack. The surging river of forgetfulness seemed to be on the verge of stopping. The already cracked bridge of helplessness was completely broken into 4 pieces. The majestic Emperor Yan's hall was also constantly shaking. The bricks and tiles on the main hall continued to shatter. A crack also appeared on the stone of 3 lives in the middle of the hall. After the initial explosion of light, the center of the light gave birth to extreme darkness. Everything in the center of the darkness kept collapsing, creating a huge suction force that turned into a black hole that swept up everything in its surroundings and sucked it into the black hole. Wang Lin's primordial spirit was sucked into the black hole. The shattered netherworld turned into ruins and was devoured by the black hole. Even the Taiji diagram, formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit, was distorted and gradually sucked into the black hole. At this moment, the great sage Zhu Jian's closed eyes suddenly opened. A dim light flashed, and the black hole suddenly exploded. The black hole shattered, and the surrounding void was forcefully annihilated. The entire void was filled with fragmented and flowing chaos. When the Sangtian Dao Jian and Su Anda saw this, they were shocked. Sangtian Dao Jian's eyes were filled with worry, while Su Anda's eyes were shining. No one knew what he was thinking. In the distance, as the Shintian god sealing banner fluttered, a youth in black with a cold expression appeared under the banner. He stared at the shattered space in the distance that had turned into nothingness. He watched as the chaos was reborn and the void was filled. However, everything that had existed before had turned into nothingness. The great sage revolving turtle's old voice sounded, "Mo Ling, that ring. Don't worry, the first attack was on his primordial spirit. Once his primordial spirit blocked the attack, the ring should be fine. It's just that after the void shattered, the spatial turbulence sent the ring and some of his belongings to an unknown place. However, it won't go beyond the range of the wonderful time wheel formation," the great sage Zhu Jian said as he scanned the void with his single eye. However, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. He turned around and saw the underworld pearl floating silently. A large amount of underworld real water gushed out from it. The dark river water gradually condensed into a human figure with facial features. It was Wang Lin. The great sage Zhu Jian's eyes narrowed. He actually cultivated such a superior death substitution rebirth technique. There were many kinds of death substitution rebirth techniques. Some were strong, some were weak, and they were not omnipotent. However, the great sage Zhu Jian's arrow just now failed to break Wang Lin's extreme path of nirvana. As the light flowed, Wang Lin returned to his human form. His face was pale, and his breath was slightly weak. However, his eyes were brighter than ever since the battle began. He stared straight at the great sage Zhu Jian. You've already died once. You should cherish your life. As I said before, hand over the ring, and I'll spare your lives. I'll let you go. The great sage Zhu Jian was stunned at first. Then, the seriousness in his single eye became more and more intense. His cold, murderous intent also became stronger. He reacted quickly, seeing that Wang Lin escaped death with a secret technique. He drew his bow again and aimed the arrow at Wang Lin again. Otherwise, you'll die here today. Your technique can save you now, but it can't save you forever. Death substitution rebirth techniques were never infinite, and they were never omnipotent. The great sage Zhu Jian wanted to add another arrow to kill Wang Lin once and for all. Wang Lin's expression was indifferent. He said coldly, "Do you think I took that arrow for nothing?" With a turn of his body, the Yuan Shun incarnation of the Tai Chi diagram appeared again. However, this time, it was much more dilapidated. The netherworld was only a barren wasteland. "Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish," the great sage Zhu Jian said as he released the terrifying arrow refined by the stars again, shooting it at Wang Lin. On the giant nether Tai Chi diagram, a strange light suddenly shone. One was black, and the other was white. Two thick beams of light crisscrossed and intersected vertically on the Tai Chi diagram formed by Wang Lin's Yuan Shun. It was like a crossroad where two roads intersected. When the great sage Zhu Jian's arrow reappeared, it had already shot at the cross-shaped light. It was about to destroy it and shatter Wang Lin's Yuan Shun for the second time. At this time, Wang Lin's calm voice came from the nether Tai Chi diagram. "Missed." As soon as he said that, the turbid wave demon arrow shot by the great sage Zhu Jian landed on the vertical black light. In a flash, the arrow seemed to have lost control. It did not follow the path formed by the black light. Instead, it strangely made a turn at the intersection of the cross-shaped light and merged with the horizontal white light. In the next moment, the turbid wave demon arrow separated from the white light. It failed to hit the nether Tai Chi diagram and flew far away. It bloomed brilliantly in the distant void and exploded. The crisscrossing black and white lights on the netherworld Tai Chi diagram suddenly pierced through the void and landed on great sage Zhu Jian. The crisscrossing black and white lights seemed light and weightless, but it was difficult for great sage Zhu Jian to dodge. Although the two lights were clearly visible, they did not seem to exist in this world. They were mysterious. The speed was not fast, but it seemed to ignore the existence of space. It was also difficult to describe its speed with time. A cold light flashed in great sage Zhu Jian's eye. Seeing that it was difficult to dodge, he snorted coldly, and his spine twitched. His spine turned into a bow and landed on the injured spot again. His chi and blood essence condensed into a dark red arrow with a monstrous, murderous aura. The target was the netherworld Tai Chi diagram that Wang Lin had transformed. He wanted to fight attack with attack and kill Wang Lin first. On the blood-red arrow, a star lit up, and it was dazzling. With his spine as the bow, his blood essence as the arrow, and his demonic power condensed, this was the strongest attack of great sage Zhu Jian's turbid wave demon arrow supernatural power. At this moment, the arrow was imbued with the power of the star, which increased its destructive power to the peak. This was great sage Zhu Jian's most powerful attack in his current realm. Although he was cold, cunning, and used a guerrilla warfare, he never lacked courage and murderous intent when it came to the time of fight. However, just as he was about to draw the arrow again, Wang Lin's calm, indifferent, and emotionless voice rang from the netherworld Tai Chi diagram again. "You die." As soon as the voice rang out, great sage Zhu Jian was shocked to discover that he had silently entered the white stream of light. His body moved along the stream of light. When he reached the point where the white light and black light intersected, he did not continue to move along the white light. Instead, he turned at the intersection point, and his body merged into the black light in another direction. In the black light, Great Sage Zhu Jian was dumbfounded. He saw his flesh and blood rotting, and his demonic power was disintegrating. His immortal demonic soul was also collapsing. His life seemed to be approaching its end uncontrollably, and he was heading toward death. The concept of death was a little unfamiliar to Great Sage Zhu Jian, but now the dark cloud of death was hanging over his head, and it seemed like all of this was because of his sentence from Wang Lin. Great Sage Zhu Jian wanted to struggle, but he found that his consciousness was gradually blurring. This great demon's ferocious nature was also aroused. As he roared, he raised his power to the peak and shot his strongest arrow at Wang Lin. "You're the one who will die." Great Sage Zhu Jian's single "I was cold." The wonderful wheel of time and space array that enveloped everyone suddenly changed. The 12 huge light pillars appeared again. The light pillars that were originally the brightest, the primordial sky dragon, the golden rock, the divine monkey, and Hundun, dimmed a little. The other 4 light pillars became brighter. Among them, there was the phoenix, the black tortoise, and the Qilin. They were all demons with strong defenses, strong vitality, and even the ability to regenerate. The last one was a great demon that had been extinct in the present epoch. Its name was Zhu Zheng. It had the body of a bear and the face of a human. Its physical strength was strong, and its vitality was exuberant. It was covered in golden fur, and its defense was extremely shocking. It was almost comparable to a pure-blooded black tortoise. The light pillar that the 4 great demons were in became brighter, and the other 8 light pillars disappeared. The 4 light pillars gradually merged into one, becoming a thick light pillar that enveloped Great Sage Zhu Jian. It was the wonderful wheel of time and space array of the 12 sacred days array. It had transformed into the wonderful wheel of time and space array of the heaven protection nirvana array. Being enveloped by the wonderful wheel of time and space array of the heaven protection nirvana array, Great Sage Zhu Jian finally struggled back from the brink of death. At the same time, he launched his own attack. The black and white cross light landed on Great Sage Zhu Jian, but it was unable to block his strongest arrow. In the sky above the Taiji diagram formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit, the true and false realm's divine power was cast. The door opened, turning real into false, and dissolved Great Sage Zhu Jian's arrow. However, Great Sage Zhu Jian's arrow, which was condensed with all his heart's blood, instantly exploded and once again interfered with Wang Lin's true and false realm divine power. Although it also weakened the turbid wave demon arrow's power, it still broke through the true and false realm and hit Wang Lin's primordial spirit incarnation, shattering his primordial spirit again. On the other side, although the wonderful wheel of nirvana array of the heaven protection nirvana array saved Great Sage Zhu Jian's life, the 2 consecutive transformations had completely exhausted the array projection's power. His divine power Dharma spell is still incomplete. Otherwise, the wonderful wheel of nirvana array of the heaven protection nirvana array might not be able to protect me. Great Sage Zhu Jian recalled Wang Lin's strange Dharma spell just now, and he felt a lingering fear. However, I finally killed this kid. However, before he could completely heave a sigh of relief, a white light shone in the void in the distance. Under Great Sage Zhu Jian's dumbfounded gaze, Wang Lin's body appeared in the white light again. Next to him, Sang Tian Dao Jian exclaimed, "Life substitution heavenly pill." The profound concept contained in the white light was the wonderful characteristic of the life substitution heavenly pill. This was one of the 4 top-notch spirit pills that were once passed down in Taishu Temple. It was first created by the almighty alchemist in the ancient heavenly gates. Sang Tian Dao Jian had not seen it for many years, but he immediately recognized it when he saw the white light. After a cultivator consumed this pill, It could be used as a substitute for death once. Apart from very few special circumstances, it could save the person who consumed it, allowing the person to revive somewhere else and escape from certain death. The only problem was that it could only be used once in a person's lifetime. Even so, the effect was extremely powerful. Looking at this scene, even great sage Zhu Jian, who had always been cold and resolute, felt a sense of despair in his heart. Is this kid unkillable? However, before he could continue thinking about it, Wang Lin stepped out of the white light. In a flash, he had returned to great sage Zhu Jian, and he manifested the netherworld Tai Chi diagram again. Wang Lin's cold voice echoed in the void. Die! The crisscrossing black and white cross appeared again, and great sage Zhu Jian fell into the white light again. In an instant, he turned into the black light at the intersection point, as if he was walking toward death. Great sage Zhu Jian gathered his demonic power. It was useless. He roused his indestructible demonic soul. Destruction. He burned his own body to refine the power of the stars. It disappeared without a trace, and it was useless. He manifested his true form, and the power of his flesh and blood surged wildly. Everything was rotting, and there was no way to stop it. This time, without the protection of the 12 sacred heavens Hua Luo formation, only death awaited great sage Zhu Jian. It was irreversible, and it could not be changed. It was like fate. Chapter 1161. Inside the black light, great sage Zhu Jian's body collapsed and disintegrated with an irreversible, unstoppable, and unchangeable momentum. His body and soul were both destroyed. There was no earth-shattering change, nor was there a vast and terrifying fluctuation of Dharma power. It was silent, but it gave people a strange feeling that it was only natural. Everything seemed to be as it should be. It was as if that was the great sage Zhu Jian's destiny. There were no accidents, and there were no ripples. However, when this scene entered the eyes of everyone present, it caused them to feel that it was inconceivable and peerlessly absurd. Mo Ling Zhu Jian, the current clan leader of the Zhu Jian clan, was one of the top great demons under the Enchantress. He was extremely powerful and had already begun to experience the first tribulation. Moreover, he had experienced tribulation more than once. The turbid wave demon arrow was so famous that most powerhouses' expressions changed. They were unwilling to fight him. Many powerhouses of the same realm, even if their Dharma power and divine abilities were not inferior to great sage Zhu Jian, were unwilling to fight him easily. This was because the turbid wave demon arrow was too insidious and had extremely powerful offensive power. Especially after great sage Zhu Jian locked onto his target with his one-eyed mystic technique, it was even more difficult for his opponent to evade. His star demon arrow's destructive power was so powerful that even some opponents with stronger Dharma power and divine abilities could not block it. When everyone present saw the last arrow that attacked Wang Lin, their hearts sank. The Underworld Hall Master, Su Anda's Dharma power and divine abilities were few among the human Tao integration stage cultivators. He could even fight against a great demon at the Star Soul integration stage who had revealed his true form. When facing other great demons at the first tribulation or going tribulation stage, due to the special nature of the king of the Underworld's orthodoxy, he could protect himself and even fight against them. However, if he fought against great sage Zhu Jian without a suitable Dharma treasure, the outcome of the battle was not optimistic for him. Sang Tiandao Jian was one of the 9 treasures of the heavenly gates. He had already reached the Mahayana stage in ancient times and had not encountered any tribulation over the years. His strength was not inferior to the human race's top Tao integration stage powerhouses. However, he knew that he was no match for great sage Zhu Jian if he fought him alone. He was a sword. His attacks were sharp and powerful. The great sage Zhu Jian's forte was not defense. If he were to fight to the death with both of them, he might be able to injure the great sage Zhu Jian, but he himself would be doomed. Even the whirling turtle great sage, who served under the enchantress together with the great sage Zhu Yin, was adept at manipulating the changes in space and had a strong defense, but he knew that he would not be able to withstand a last arrow from the great sage Zhu Jian. Perhaps his ancestor, the pure-blooded black tortoise, could resist it with his defense, but he definitely couldn't. The Fei great sage and the Bai Feng great sage, who had just joined the enchantress, were also impressed by the turbid wave demon arrow of the great sage Zhu Jian. They would never forget that when the great sage Zhu Jian was still in the realm of Astral Soul as one, he had once shot and killed a great demon who was also in the realm of Astral Soul as one. As the great sage Zhu Jian, who had the highest cultivation level and had experienced more tribulations than Ning Wanga, there was no doubt that he was the strongest. However, such a ferocious great demon seemed to have no strength to struggle at this moment. He was devoured by the mysterious black light, and both his spirit and body were destroyed. This bizarre scene made everyone present, including opponents like the whirling turtle great sage, the Fei great sage, and the Bai Feng great sage, as well as people on the same side like Su Anda and Jian Sangtian, feel that it was ridiculous and unbelievable. At the same time, they could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. The scene in front of them made their minds confused. If Wang Lin's realm had suddenly increased, his supernatural power had suddenly increased, or he had suddenly taken out a creation treasure and killed the great sage Zhu Jian, they could still accept it. However, the scene in front of them clearly showed that Wang Lin had been reborn twice in a row. His supernatural power did not increase, but instead decreased. However, it was as if his words were the law, and he had decided the fate of great sage Zhu Jian's life and death, sending him to his doom. This was completely beyond everyone's imagination. The netherworld Tai Chi diagram formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit was now full of cracks, as if it was being torn apart. The netherworld on the Tai Chi diagram could not even be considered a wasteland. It was empty and desolate, filled with an aura of decline and decay. The Tai Chi diagram rotated slowly and once again turned into a human form, revealing the appearance of Wang Lin. The injury on his arm was still there. Not only that, but there were also 2 unhealed wounds on his chest and abdomen. The essence of the great path was like drops of blood that fell to the void below him. Wang Lin's face was as pale as a piece of paper, without a trace of blood. However, his eyes were unprecedentedly bright. He looked at the crisscrossing black and white light in front of him, and watched as great sage Zhu Jian completely disappeared in the black light. The mysterious power concept made the whirling turtle great sage and the other great demons unable to save him in time. Indeed, this new Dharma spell is not perfect. Wang Lin's expression was calm as he sighed. His sighs sounded like thunder in the ears of the whirling turtle great sage and the others. Although the white-haired young man in front of them looked extremely weak, his figure seemed even more terrifying. The great demons could not help but have the same thought. He should still be a primordial spirit embodiment realm cultivator. But what was that Dharma spell he used just now? Among Lin Feng's personal disciples, the one that the demon clan paid the most attention to was the second disciple, Zhu Yi, because he had the creation Dharma treasure, the Permitha Golden Bridge. This was unavoidable, and the person that the demon clan was most familiar with was the 7th disciple, Shi Tianhao. Among Lin Feng's personal disciples, he was the one who entered infinite wilderness the most. He had killed many people in the demon clan, and his reputation was completely built on killing. Sometimes his reputation was also built on eating. Relatively speaking, although Wang Lin was also in the eyes of the demon clan, they did not know much about him. However, after today's battle, Wang Lin's reputation as the killing god would also be widely spread in infinite wilderness. As a primordial spirit embodiment realm cultivator, he had killed Zhu Jian, who had already begun to experience the tribulation. It was already destined that his reputation would be known throughout the great heaven primordial world. In fact, from today onwards, Wang Lin would gradually begin to leave the protection of his master, the master of the celestial sect, Lin Feng. Because of his own powerful strength, His name would be known throughout infinite wilderness and the divine land, becoming an expert that no one could ignore. Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao were known as the four heroes of the celestial sect. Ever since they all reached the Essence Soul Realm in the extermination battle, they had truly stepped onto the biggest stage and danced with the big shots. After today's battle, Wang Lin would take a big step forward from the edge of the stage to the center. The war between the two worlds was filled with infinite danger, infinite opportunities, and infinite variables. The fall of an expert often meant the rise of another expert. Among Lin Feng's personal disciples, Wang Lin was the first to take this step today. What made the great sage of the revolving turtle sect and the others feel heavy and worried was that Wang Lin was not the only disciple under Lin Feng. The people who participated in the war between the two worlds and fought for the highest victory were all top experts. The clashes between them caused every participant to gradually reveal their true strength, which they usually hid and bided their time. But now, the celestial sect of Xianmen, a behemoth that made the vast land of the divine land and the vast land of infinite wasteland, had also begun to gradually reveal its enormous power that made most people suffocate. Just thinking about it made it difficult for people to have the heart to resist. After the projection of the 12 sacred skies, wonderful flower array disappeared. The confusion and pain in Ning Wang's eyes gradually dissipated. She happened to see the scene of Wang Lin activating a new Dharma spell for the third time and cursing Great Sage Zhu Jian. She had roughly witnessed Great Sage Zhu Jian's strength before and was shocked at this moment. But soon, Ning Wang calmed down again. Without the disturbance of the enchantress's Dharma power aura, her eyes gradually regained their calmness. The colorful light around her was still flashing, but it was no longer chaotic and out of control. Instead, it revealed an even more mysterious aura. Ning Wang looked at Wang Lin and said softly, "I'm sorry." Although she had fallen into a state of qi deviation and lost control, after regaining her consciousness, Ning Wang naturally knew how her sudden change would affect the situation of the battle. Although Wang Lin had killed Great Sage Zhu Jian, he had also paid a huge price, and she was part of the reason. Ning Wang turned her head and her eyes fell on Great Sage Bai Fong, which made the great demon feel uncomfortable. She stared at Great Sage Bai Fong without saying a word, but her figure flashed, and she was already flying towards him. Why did the enchantress's Dharma power aura make her lose control? This was something that Ning Wang was very concerned about. Great Sage Bai Fong, Whirling Turtle Sage, and Fei Sage took a deep breath together, their gazes extremely complicated. Although the Wang Lin before them looked extremely weak, and the powerful spell that killed Great Sage Zhu Jian was undoubtedly a huge burden to him, Whirling Turtle Sage and the other great demons still did not dare to underestimate him. No one could guarantee that he could perform that terrifying and strange spell again. Similarly, the extreme nirvana of the Great Path and the life-substituting heavenly elixir had already been used up, and no one could guarantee that Wang Lin would not have other ways to substitute for death. Today's battle had surprised them, and there were too many things that confused them. Faced with this kind of completely unknown threat, Whirling Turtle Sage and the other great demons were not interested in continuing to challenge him before they understood his background. Great Sage Zhu Jian had already set an example for them. Moreover, even without Wang Lin, if Ning Wang recovered from the state of qi deviation and joined forces with Song Tiandao, Jian, and Su Anda, the outcome of the battle would no longer be within their control. Even if Wang Lin joined the battle, which would put a greater burden on him, Whirling Turtle Sage was not interested in perishing together with him. Under such circumstances, Whirling Turtle Sage and the other great demons chose to retreat without hesitation. That ring has fallen into Xianmen Tianzong's hands. Whirling Turtle Sage, Fei Sage, and Great Sage Bai Fong looked at each other, their hearts heavy. They had lost Great Sage Zhu Jian for nothing, and they really did not know how to explain this to the enchantress when they returned. Chapter 1162. He had successfully killed Zhu Jian, but Wang Lin was not in a good condition. The Zhu Jian's turbid wave demonic arrow was indeed domineering and insidious. Even though Wang Lin had used the death substitution rebirth technique to reconstruct his primordial spirit, the injury was still there. Although it was no longer fatal, it still affected his condition and made him extremely weak. However, Wang Lin's eyes were bright, as if there were streams of light surging in them, reflecting the great Tao of heaven and earth. Under the heavy pressure of the enemy, his understanding of the laws of heaven and earth improved further. From there, he used a new divine ability to kill great sage Zhu Jian, and this process was fed back to Wang Lin, causing his understanding of the Tao to improve again. Under this cycle, his overall strength improved. Since he started cultivating, Wang Lin felt that his understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth was the most profound. At this moment, he even felt a little disconnected, and his spirit was extremely tired and weak. However, the light in his beer seemed to be getting brighter and brighter. Although Ning Wanga hoped to capture the Bai Fong Great Sage and the other demons to find out the relationship between herself and the Enchantress Great Sage, but with only her Su Anda and the Sword of Heavenly Way, they would not be able to keep the Bai Fong Great Sage, the Revolving Turtle Great Sage, and the Fei Great Sage. It was hard to tell who would win in this battle, but if Bai Fong Great Sage and the other demons wanted to escape, they could do it. Ning Wanga had no choice but to give up. Wang Lin sat cross-legged in the void and said slowly, "What do you plan to do in the future, fellow Taoist Ning?" Ning Wanga looked at Wang Lin and said softly, "I've never come into contact with the enchantress of the demon race before, so I didn't know that there would be such changes between us. I hope to find my lost past from her." Wang Lin looked at her and said, "After this incident, the enchantress might also pay attention to you." Lin Feng, Wang Lin, and Lin Feng didn't know what the relationship between the enchantress and Ning Wanga was. They also didn't know if the enchantress knew about Ning Wanga's lost past 4,000 years ago. However, it was certain that the two were related. For Ning Wanga, the enchantress was an important clue that she was pursuing. It was also the only clear clue that she had so far. As for the enchantress, it was hard to predict how he would view Ning Wanga. Ning Wanga nodded and said, "Yes, that's right. One was a human and the other was a demon. The enchantress's strength was above hers. Moreover, coming into contact with the enchantress's mana aura would cause her to fall into a predicament of losing control. It was undoubtedly extremely difficult for her to obtain information from the enchantress. If the enchantress also wanted to find her, she would be in a very bad situation." After a moment of silence, Ning Wanga said softly, "I hope to meet your master, the master of the celestial sect. Please introduce me to him." Wang Lin nodded and said, "Sure." Without the obstruction of the wonderful time wheel array and the space enchantment created by the whirling turtle great sage, Wang Lin and the others were able to return to the vast thousand worlds very quickly and re-establish contact with Lin Feng and the others. Lin Feng, who was above the deep abyss mountain in the infinite wilderness, had also received the news. Being sandwiched by the wonderful time wheel array and the deep abyss mountain, facing three great demons in the Dharma ending realm, the enchantress, the great sage, and Zhu Yan. Even Lin Feng could only barely maintain a defensive position when he didn't know how to use the heaven-sealing sword. If the power of the deep abyss mountain was further activated, the situation would inevitably be even more disadvantageous to Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng's eyes were calm. He looked up at the enchantress and the wonderful time wheel array with a faint smile on his face. The huge light pillar in the void suddenly changed its appearance. The light shadow of a great demon appeared in the light pillar. Apart from the primordial celestial dragon, the figures of the demon ape, the Kuan Peng, and the black tortoise gradually disappeared. Instead, the three great demon shadows of the golden-winged rock, Chaos, and the spiritual monkey stood side by side with the golden dragon shadow. At this moment, the mystical heaven and earth shaking array had transformed into the mystical time and space wheel array. The enchantress had also received the message from the whirling turtle great sage and the other great demons, and learned of the death of the Zhu Jian great sage. In addition, she had received a report from the heavenly wolf great sage earlier and knew that the heavenly wolf great sage was being targeted by Zhu Yi. It was extremely difficult for him to escape and could not help the Zhu Jian great sage and the whirling turtle great sage. Her hope of obtaining the ring that originally belonged to the Golden Rock Great Sage had been dashed. Not only that, but she had also lost one of her most capable subordinates, the Zhu Jian Great Sage. The enchantress could be said to have suffered a great loss this time. The gains did not make up for the losses. However, she maintained a calm state of mind and did not continue to fight with Lin Feng. The Zhu Jian Great Sage and the others had failed. It was meaningless for her to delay the action of the Lin Feng Great Sage here. Although she had the idea of not continuing to let Lin Feng grow stronger and join forces with the other great demons to severely injure or even kill him, she obviously did not have enough confidence at the moment. It was fine if Lin Feng did not release the Sealing Heaven Punishment Sword. Once he did, both sides would suffer, and the result of his own side being defeated was not what the enchantress wanted. Therefore, after receiving the report from the revolving turtle great sage and the others, the enchantress made a prompt decision. Without the slightest hesitation, he immediately changed the amazing heaven and earth shaking formation into the amazing time and space spinning formation and quickly left the Spirit Deep Mountain. Lin Feng's dermic journey to the Spirit Deep Mountain was originally to lure the Golden Rock Great Sage and her out. Now that the Golden Rock was in danger, she had become Lin Feng's target. If they did not have enough confidence, even if the Great Sage and the Zhu Yan Great Sage had the Spirit Deep Mountain, they would naturally not fight to the death with Lin Feng. It seemed to be rising slowly, but in fact the huge light beam that instantly broke through the void broke away from the sky above Yujing Mountain. Lin Feng looked up and said, "Are you in a hurry to leave now?" With a thought, the yin and yang life and death formation above Yujing Mountain suddenly unfolded, changing from defense to offense. With the change of the two poles, it sucked in the amazing time and space spinning formation that was trying to escape. Within the yin and yang life and death formation, Ding of Shinzhou shook and began to fall down with the yin and yang life and death formation, as if it was being dragged by the weight of the entire vast thousand worlds. The amazing time and space spinning formation that was rising up to escape was immediately fixed again, unable to escape. In the light beam, the enchantress's eyes could be vaguely seen. They were like bright stars, looking down at Lin Feng on Yujing Mountain without sorrow or joy. And on the Spirit Deep Mountain below, the Great Sage and the Zhu Yin Great Sage watched this scene expressionlessly, but they did not do anything else. Although the demonic atmosphere of the Spirit Deep Mountain soared to the sky, its power did not increase. It only maintained its original state and fixed Lin Feng's Yujing Mountain in place. At this moment, although Lin Feng had changed from defense to offense, making it impossible for the enchantress to escape, in fact, he was still at a disadvantage. With the Spirit Deep Mountain's geographical advantage and the existence of the 12 amazing divine light formation, Lin Feng's current strength could not withstand the three demons with their full strength. But once the sky-crushing sword was unsealed, the outcome became unpredictable. Without sufficient confidence, neither the Ape Clan nor the Enchantress could make up their minds to fight to the death with Lin Feng. The current situation was not beneficial to the Demon Clan in the war between the two worlds. The Golden Rock Great Sage had fallen, and the Enchantress, the Great Sage, and the Zhu Yin Great Sage, three great demons of the Dharma-ending realm, were restrained here by Lin Feng. Meanwhile, the Dragon Clan and the Taishu Temple were engaged in a fierce battle in the mysterious sea. Xianmen Tianzong and the Taishu Temple joined forces to share the pressure brought by almost all the top great demons of the Demon Clan, while the other experts of the Human Clan, led by Emperor Qin Stonefeather, began to attack Infinite Wasteland. Even the great Zhou dynasty, which had been hiding its strength and biding its time, seized the opportunity to take the initiative to attack. At this point in the war between the two worlds, the situation was very beneficial to the cultivators of the human clan. At this moment, in the Ing Sea, in the hall at the peak of Mount Punglai, a huge figure that was 40 feet tall was sitting cross-legged. His facial features were handsome, and his body was well-proportioned. Although he was much taller than an ordinary person, he still looked very harmonious sitting in the empty hall. He was a zenith heaven. Under Lin Feng's guidance, this huge body was condensed from the 9 streams of clear qi of Mount Punglai. It was only 40 feet tall at the moment, and would only be close to completion when it reached 90 feet tall. However, the appearance of this clone was the image of zenith heaven when he was called Luo Yao. His facial features were exactly the same as Luo Yao's, except that he looked a little older and his body was much larger. In front of this clone of zenith heaven's 9 qi, a purplish gold pearl floated. It was the heavenly scarlet golden pearl in which the demon soul of zenith heaven's true body resided. Golden fog appeared in the heavenly scarlet golden pearl, flashing with purple light. The fog gradually condensed into a form in midair, which was the appearance of a Yuta beast. Its facial features and limbs were similar to a human's, but it had a triangular head and a silver-white mane on its back. Its body was covered in purple light patterns, and it was the appearance of Zenith Heaven's true body. Zenith Heaven's true body and his 9 Qi clones sat opposite each other, cultivating together silently. Their auras were constantly connected, and the clear Qi of Mount Punglai was also poured into him. Suddenly, the body of Zenith Heaven's true body that was formed by the heavenly scarlet golden pearl trembled slightly. He opened his eyes, which were flashing with purple light, and his face was filled with shock. Before he could think, Zenith Heaven's true body had already turned back into fog and returned to the heavenly scarlet golden pearl. Then, the heavenly scarlet golden pearl began to tremble violently for some unknown reason. Zenith Heaven's 9 Qi clones were puzzled. After carefully analyzing it for a moment, he quickly contacted Lin Feng. Master Lin, the heavenly scarlet golden pearl has suddenly changed, but it's just a simple tremble. I don't know what it means. Oh, Lin Feng's gaze flickered slightly, and many thoughts appeared in his mind. He said, "Stay in Mount Punglai and don't go out. If there are any other strange movements, just contact me immediately." Zenith Heaven nodded in agreement. After cutting off the connection, Lin Feng turned around and looked at the barren space in front of him with a slight frown. 4-colored lightning danced in the void. The person here wasn't Lin Feng's true body, but his clone of Brontosaurus. He had originally come to find the Yudu skeleton of Golden Rock Great Sage, but when he came to that dimensional world, he searched everywhere, but the skeleton was nowhere to be seen. Logically speaking, the skeleton was randomly teleported here by the world-breaking stone. Other than Lin Feng, who had left the spatial waymark, and Golden Rock Great Sage, who had once sacrificed it, no one else should be able to determine its location. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly as he pondered. Chapter 1163. The skeleton contained powerful spirit energy. Although it had no consciousness, it couldn't be treated as a dead object that couldn't move. It was just that when Lin Feng used the world-breaking stone to move it to this deserted medium dimension, the skeleton was in an extremely unstable state. The power contained in it could explode at any time. Under such circumstances, without Golden Rock Saint's control, it should have gradually calmed down, or it could completely explode and destroy the medium dimension. However, when Lin Feng came to this medium dimension, he couldn't feel the existence of the skeleton, which surprised him, of the people present at that time. Even though Lin Feng could see that Emperor Zhou and Liang Pan were deeply hidden and still had hidden methods, but to find a randomly moved skeleton was probably still beyond their abilities. The Haotian mirror was still in the mysterious sea, so Yin Namline naturally couldn't find the Yuta skeleton. Among the remaining people, Golden Rock Saint had been killed by the Enchantress, so it couldn't be him. The heavenly charm Great Sage had intercepted and killed the Golden Rock Great Sage. She might be able to get some clues from the Golden Rock Great Sage, but she herself needed time to intercept and kill the Golden Rock Great Sage. Logically speaking, it should not be as fast as Lin Feng's Thunder Dragon clone. Was it Great Peafowl Saint? Lin Feng pondered. Great Peafowl Saint's whereabouts were unknown, so he couldn't be sure if he had come to find the skeleton. Although Golden Rock Saint and Great Peafowl Saint had a close relationship, it was hard to say if Golden Rock Saint would let Great Peafowl Saint have a share of such an important treasure. However, Lin Feng felt that the sudden disappearance of the Yudu skeleton had nothing to do with Great Peafowl Saint. Even if Great Peafowl Saint could find the skeleton, he would be slower than Brontosaurus's clone. After all, although Lin Feng's true body had returned to the Great Thunderclap Monastery in the Divine Land with the power of the world-breaking stone and entered the black hole, the first thing Lin Feng did was to drive his Brontosaurus clone to the medium dimension. Who knew that after entering the medium dimension, he would find nothing? In the time that followed, Lin Feng turned the medium dimension inside and out, but he still couldn't find the skeleton. With Brontosaurus's clone's divine arts and demon power cultivation, after such a long and serious search, even an ordinary rock would have been found, not to mention the huge amount of demon power contained in the skeleton. During this time, no one else entered the medium dimension. Lin Feng vaguely felt someone approaching, but quickly retreated. The aura of the person's magic power was similar to that of Enchantress, so it was very likely to be his clone. Logically, others shouldn't be able to get here before me. If it isn't someone who was there at that time, things will be interesting. Lin Feng thought about the news that Zenith Immortal had mentioned when he had contacted him and thought, could it be that the Yudu race is really going to come out again? With that thought, Lin Feng frowned. When the Spirit Sea was sealed the last time, the imprint on the Yudu race shouldn't have been completely erased. But judging from that time, the imprint will probably be erased before the Spirit Sea reopens 100 years later, and the Yudu race will be able to see the light of day again. But it still shouldn't be so soon. Whether it was Lin Feng or Taishu Temple, they all hoped that the war between the two worlds would break out as soon as possible. Of course, part of this was due to the calamity that the Tenryu Jin had experienced, but it was also due to the fact that the Yudu race could come out again at any time. Lin Feng controlled the heavenly scarlet golden bead, and when the Spirit Sea was sealed once again, he had a clearer sense of the movements of the Yudu race. Even though the Yudu race couldn't erase their imprint completely in the chaos of that day, they didn't need to wait for the Spirit Sea to reopen 100 years later to break free of the shackles on them. But logically, it shouldn't be so soon. Am I thinking too much? Lin Feng raised his head slightly. But if it isn't Yudu, where did the skeleton go? The sudden movement from the heavenly scarlet golden bead probably isn't a coincidence. He shook his head and took a deep breath. The clone of the Brontosaurus shed its human form and revealed the true form of the silver Brontosaurus. Four-colored lightning flashed continuously, and there was even a black glow flowing on the surface of the lightning. The huge silver Brontosaurus stretched across the void, and its eyes gradually lit up with a purple glow that was domineering and profound. He had tried this method before, but there was no reaction. However, after such a long time, Lin Feng executed it again. It wasn't an attempt out of helplessness, but Lin Feng knew that if someone had taken away that piece of Yudu's skeleton, he might be able to conceal his traces at the start, but if he had to sacrifice it or perform some kind of ritual, it would be hard for him to not reveal any traces and be caught by Lin Feng. Lin Feng cultivated his spirit to return to the void and comprehended his Tao of two extremes. He had referenced the contents of heavenly Tao demon scriptures, and his clone of the Brontosaurus had also cultivated heavenly Tao demon scriptures. His ability to sense the Yudu skeleton surpassed many people's imaginations. The eyes of the clone of the Brontosaurus shone with a purple glow, but there was no other reaction. However, Lin Feng didn't lose his patience. The clone of the Brontosaurus silently executed its demon power. After an unknown period of time, the purple glow suddenly trembled as though it had formed a connection with a place far away. It stretched out into the distance like a path. Even though this path appeared and disappeared from time to time, shaking nonstop and looking very unstable, Lin Feng instantly smiled when he saw it. The huge silver brontosaurus turned and flew along the path paved by the purple glow. It flew into the void far away and left the dimensional world that it was currently in. After flying for a short while, Lin Feng's expression couldn't help changing slightly. He looked over and saw the void in front of him suddenly changing. In the dark void, there was a dazzling purple glow that covered the starlight in the sky. The purple glow spread out and covered the sky, making people's hearts palpitate. The terrifying power rippled continuously and shook the sky. Lin Feng could even clearly see the traces of destruction in the void. The void was destroyed, forming a chaotic scene. However, under the intimidation of the purple light, the moment it transformed into a new void, it was destroyed and turned into nothingness before it could completely form. The source of this terrifying scene was in the center of the purple light, where there was a strange and unfathomable skeleton. Beams of purple light spewed out from the Yudu remains, and countless runes and diagrams spread out in all directions. They were engraved in the void and turned a radius of 10 million miles purple. It was as though it was an independent world. Even Lin Feng's brontosaurus clone had a feeling of wanting to worship this terrifying power from the bottom of his heart. The dragon might of the dragon race naturally produced a heavy awe to other life forms. It was as though it was the mandate of heaven and the style of an emperor. However, at this moment, facing the Yudu remains, the dragon might of Lin Feng's brontosaurus clone that was like a thick thundercloud actually slowly dissipated. As the last imperial race of Heaven Wasteland, Yudu's reign was truly heavy during its period of rule. It was practically engraved in the demon souls and bloodlines of other demon races. Lin Feng shook his head. This dragon body of mine has been refined by me, so it's already very special. If it were any other dragon race, they would probably be suppressed even worse. When the bloodline is purified and the body of a primordial heavenly dragon is reformed, then perhaps I can be immune to the pressure from Yudu on the same realm. However, facing the skeleton of Yu Wang, Celestial Sea, even a heavenly dragon in the last days realm would feel immense pressure. However, this skeleton is a dead object after all, so the pressure can still be overcome. I just have to be wary of the powerful power it contains. Lin Feng swept his gaze and realized that the skeleton was being activated by someone. The power inside wasn't as violent as when Goldenrock's Sane had activated it. Instead, it had become orderly. But in Lin Feng's eyes, this scene did not make him feel happy at all. This meant that the person who had activated the skeleton was very likely the Yudu beast of the same race as Yu Wang Celestial Sea. It's really Yudu. What are they trying to do? Lin Feng's gaze flickered slightly. If they've already broken free from the restraints of the Spirit Sea, then they should be able to return to the boundless world directly. Why are they casting spells on this skeleton? What's the use of this ritual? Lin Feng frowned. He saw the dazzling purple light in the void gradually outline a hazy and illusory spell altar. The lines of the spell altar were slightly blurry and unclear, but the concept that leaked out from it made Lin Feng frown slightly. From the center of the spell altar, a dazzling pillar of light shot out into the void above, straight into the sky. Although the pillar of light seemed to be shooting towards the void above the spell altar, there was actually no direction in the chaotic void at the edge of the boundless world. It was hard to determine where the pillar of light was going, so one could only be sure that it was shooting towards a certain direction in the boundless world. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly, and his consciousness swept out. He felt the aura that leaked out from the pillar of light, and his expression changed. This spell altar seems to be a signpost. It seems to be guiding something. After pondering for a moment, Lin Feng came to a realization. I see. Yudu race wants to move their ancestral land. Ever since the war between the two worlds, Yudu race had always been hidden in a dimensional world. That place didn't come into contact with the outside world, and if they wanted to enter, they could only be forcefully broken open by strong practitioners. In that dimensional world stood Yudu Royal City, which was also where the ancestral land of Yudu race was located. After Yuwang Celestial Sea conquered the ape race and dealt a heavy blow to Spirit Abyss Mountain. That place was a stronger existence than Spirit Abyss Mountain, and it had disappeared along with Yudu race. That was a backup plan that Yuwang Celestial Sea had personally left behind to merge Yudu Royal City with that dimensional world. During the Battle of the Spirit Sea back then, according to Yuwang Celestial Sea's will, the great demons of Yudu didn't execute the power of their ancestral land to prevent the Spirit Sea from retaliating. Now that Yudu race had broken free from the restraints of the Spirit Sea and wanted to return to the boundless world, they naturally wanted to bring Yudu Royal City back to the boundless world as well. To execute the ritual through the power of the world, the ability of the caster must be extremely high. Lin Feng's pupils contracted slightly, but he didn't slow down at all. The claw of the Brontosaurus moved, and a few beams of light flew out to sweep towards the spell altar. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone had only just moved, and the surroundings of the spell altar instantly trembled. Dazzling purple light danced nonstop, and it was as though a tsunami was wreaking havoc. Chapter 1164. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone looked at the blurry spell altar in the air. The demon power, and it was like a tsunami that shook the surrounding void. Lin Feng didn't touch it blindly. His demon power was also coated with a layer of purple light. Although it was milder than the power of the spell altar and the skeleton, it was still strange and domineering. It was as if it came from the same source. It looked as if the spirit chi in the surroundings was absorbed and assimilated by the spell altar before being sucked over. In this way, it became much easier for Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone's demon power to approach the spell altar. It no longer caused intense hostility. Lin Feng's demon power followed the purple light and gradually entered the spell altar. The ritual looked rough, but when Lin Feng understood it, he instantly discovered that the changes in the demon power were fine and subtle. He couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Countless talisman patterns converged together, ceaselessly changing their arrangement and combination, and it was dazzling to the eyes. However, Lin Feng more or less had some understanding towards the divine arts of the Yudu race. These transformations that made other people feel complicated when they saw it. In his eyes, he could see some clues. The method of the heavenly Tao demon scriptures, the innate divine arts of the Yudu race, and the unique understanding of the laws of heaven and earth of the caster. Lin Feng nodded slightly. At the same time, his mood gradually became solemn. That was because when he was studying the spell altar, he faintly heard the wail of the great Tao. This sound wasn't really heard by Lin Feng, but it rang in his heart. This was because when his Brontosaurus clone's consciousness and demon power explored the spell altar gave him feedback. Listening carefully, Lin Feng could even feel that it was two wails overlapping. One was stronger, but it seemed rigid. The other was weaker, but it was agile and full of changes. The former belonged to the remains in Yuwang Celestial Sea, while the latter undoubtedly came from the Yudu beast that was activating the ritual. If the experts of the demon race successfully survived the tribulation, then when they revealed their true form, their demonic aura would resound with the mournful wails of the great Tao. The Yudu beast that was activating the ritual had actually successfully gone through the middle tribulation and reached the cultivation realm of the middle tribulation stage. When Lin Feng saw that the other party was able to construct a ritual even though they were separated by the power of the domain, he was already alarmed. He knew that this was a powerful opponent, and now he had further confirmation. However, Lin Feng still had some doubts in his heart. Back when I was in the Spirit Sea, I saw the Yudu beasts and the people of Taishu Temple wrestling in Yudu Royal City. Even though there were quite a number of strong practitioners, I didn't see any of them experiencing a calamity. After the Spirit Sea was sealed once again, some great demon of Yudu in the last days realm tried to experience the calamity and succeeded. On top of that, it passed through the period of weakness in a short time. In the three calamities of creation, the collapse of the great Tao would ignore the changes in time and space. The time of the person experiencing the calamity would be the same as that of the boundless world. However, the time needed for different people to recover would be different. Or could it be that the Yudu beast in the middle tribulation stage had just experienced the calamity and was at its weakest, so it simply didn't make a move? Many thoughts flashed through Lin Feng's mind. Or could it be that the Yudu beast was in death seclusion and couldn't care about what was happening outside? In any case, this discovery was definitely not good news for Lin Feng. He wasn't afraid of the other party, but this sudden and unexpected change would have an impact on the war between the two worlds. It was hard to predict, and it would cause the situation to change beyond Lin Feng's control. During the Battle of the Spirit Sea, Taishu Temple and the Yudu race had fought with each other across the Spirit Sea. This allowed Lin Feng and Taishu Temple to have a rough judgment of the Yudu race's abilities. Even though he had tried to bring forward the time of the war between the two worlds, and the Yudu race wouldn't be able to return to the boundless world in time, in Lin Feng's many plans, he had left a place for the Yudu race in the worst-case scenario. If the Yudu race really returned to the boundless world, Lin Feng wasn't completely unprepared. However, that was against the power that the Yudu race had displayed at that time. The sudden appearance of a Yudu beast that had experienced the middle tribulation couldn't be ignored, especially when the other party had tried to bring Yudu Royal City back to the boundless world. In theory, any top-notch great demon in the last days realm could successfully experience the middle tribulation, but without enough accumulation, the probability of success was far lower than the probability of failure. The appearance of a Yudu beast that had suddenly experienced the middle tribulation was one of the worst scenarios that Lin Feng had predicted. However, he had to think carefully about how to deal with it. However, that was a matter for the future. To Lin Feng, the first thing he had to do was to disrupt the other party's ritual and stop their abilities from growing further. The Yudu race had returned to the boundless world, and to them, there were many things that they were clueless about. Their first priority was to gather information and understand the current situation of the heaven primordial world. After all, they had been separated from the world for over 4,600 years. But after getting a clear picture of the current situation, Yudu clan would almost definitely join in the war against the current situation of the two worlds. At that moment, the situation of the human race was great, and the situation of the demon race was terrible. The Yudu race could use Lin Feng, Taishu Temple, and the rest to sweep away the obstacles to their return to the demon world of heaven, wasteland, vastland. However, if the power of the demon race was severely damaged, they wouldn't be happy to see it. The main strong practitioners of Taishu Temple and the Haotian Mirror stayed in the mysterious sea, while Lin Feng's main body and Mount Yujing were restrained by the primordial devil ape race and the enchantress. To the Yudu race, this was also a rare opportunity. They would have a huge advantage. Lin Feng didn't even need to think much to guess their number one target. They had fought a bloody battle in the previous war between the two worlds, and their hatred was as deep as the sea. This time, their main force was restrained by the dragon race in the mysterious sea, and their Taishu Temple was severely lacking. There was no Haotian Mirror, no Grand One Venerable, Shoichi Dashin, and Tao Venerable Qing One. There wasn't enough power in the great formation of Yin and Yang of the Great Void. In such a situation, if the Yudu race went all out, under the leadership of this Yudu beast that was undergoing calamity, they might be able to break through White Cloud Mountain. Whether the dragon race would be willing to let the great demons of Yudu into the mysterious sea to deal with the main force of Taishu Temple was hard to say, but all the demons would be happy to see White Cloud Mountain being flattened. This result would cause numerous chain reactions, and it would change the entire situation of the war between the two worlds. It would cause Lin Feng and the rest of the strong practitioners of the human race to lose control of the future. Lin Feng frowned slightly, and he communicated with his main body, the clone of War God, and the rest of the people in Xianmen Tianzong. He then reported the news to the various powers of the human race in the Divine Land. Lin Feng wasn't sure if the others believed what he said, how they would deal with the news, and what thoughts they had in their hearts. However, he would inform them of this important news in time to prevent the people in the Divine Land from being caught off guard. Not long later, a tall figure wearing armor appeared in the void. His facial features were the same as Lin Feng's. It was his clone of War God. At the same time, an even taller giant that reached a height of 90 yards also appeared beside Brontosaurus's clone. It was the 9-Chi clone that Lin Feng had cultivated with the 9 paths of clear Chi of Mount Punglai. The 2 clones arrived at the scene, and they didn't say anything. They each took a corner and stood in a triangular formation with Brontosaurus's clone. They didn't direct the magic power of their divine arts into the purple spell altar. Instead, they buffed the Brontosaurus's clone and let Brontosaurus's clone take the lead. The majestic yet low-profile magic power spread continuously in the purple spell altar and slowly corroded it. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, but Lin Feng's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. In his consciousness, an image gradually appeared. It turned from blurry to clear, as though it was appearing in front of his eyes. In the world of darkness, black fog filled the air. In the depths of the black fog, there was an incomparably huge city. The city was completely black, but it flashed with silver light. In the void above the city stood numerous Yuta beasts. They all had triangular heads and humanoid faces, but their backs were covered with long silver-white fur. A huge tail dragged behind them, and the surface of their skin was covered in purple runes. Silently, the Yudu great demon in the lead stood with his mouth open. In front of him floated a purple ball of light. Countless streams of light flowed out from the ball of light, and they were all connected to the huge Yudu royal city below. The silver light from the royal city illuminated the sky, and it shook the entire medium-sized world. Even the void outside the medium-sized world was shaken. On the ball of light, a black line stretched out, and it extended out of the medium-sized world as though it was connected to something. Lin Feng knew in his heart that it was connected to the spell altar. He looked at the Yudu great demon in the lead, and even with the barrier of the world, he could still feel an extremely dangerous aura from its body. Lin Feng's expression was calm as he stared at the Yudu great demon. He saw a hint of a cold smile on the corner of the Yudu beast's mouth. Its eyes flashed, and it seemed to be looking at Lin Feng. This was within Lin Feng's expectations. From a moment he could see the sight of this medium-sized world. He knew he had also fallen into the enemy's line of sight. His sneak attack on the spell altar had already been discovered by the other party. Even though I don't know who you are, you seem to have obtained some inheritance from Brother Tianhai, Imperial Brother. The heavenly Tao demon scriptures you cultivate are extremely orthodox, and you seem to have reached a certain level. However, I have to thank you. The Yudu beast suddenly spoke human language, and its voice could be heard clearly by Lin Feng. Before it could even finish speaking, the spell altar in front of Lin Feng's eyes changed. It suddenly turned from blurry to clear, and it transformed into a huge spell altar that was 30,000 yards tall. It was split into 11 layers, and tens of thousands of rays of light illuminated the entire void. A huge suction force was produced, and Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone, Battle God clone, and 9-Chi clone were all sucked in. They couldn't escape, and it was as though they were going to be fused into the spell altar. Meanwhile, the pillar of light above the spell altar gradually turned into a black line, and it was actually the same as the black line on the Yudu beast ball of light in the medium-sized world. Next, the spell altar actually started to break through the void, wanting to break through the boundary and land on the boundless world. It was obvious that the ritual had officially started to pull Yudu Royal City back to the boundless world. Chapter 1165. Lin Feng's 3 clones were sucked in by the spell altar at the same time, and the dazzling light kept on swaying in the void. The spell altar descended in one direction, and it was precisely where the great thousand worlds were located. The bottom of the spell altar came into contact with the boundary of the great thousand worlds, and cracks appeared in the void. White light flickered in the cracks, and it was precisely the unstable turbulence of the boundary power that had gone out of control. The entire spell altar began to fuse with the great thousand worlds, and at the top of the spell altar, a black line extended far into the void, guiding another colossal being. Lin Feng did not use the two-world void technique to replace his original body. His Brontosaurus clone revealed his true form, and a true spirit divine rune appeared on his forehead. The huge dragon body began to become illusory, and at times it was the body of a true dragon with majestic chi and blood, and at other times it turned into a ray of light. Although the Brontosaurus clone was sucked in by the spell altar, it was only unable to escape, and it did not affect him from casting spells and divine arts. As the silver-white Brontosaurus let out a long roar, the dark void suddenly split open, and resplendent starlight appeared from within. It was as if a galaxy was right in front of him. The stars in the Milky Way had originally been revolving steadily according to the trajectory that had never changed since ancient times, but at this moment, it was as if they were being pulled by some kind of power, and the trajectory of the stars seemed to have changed. The change was so subtle that even a cultivator or a great demon would find it hard to detect it. However, how powerful was the power of the stars? Even the slightest change would produce boundless power. At this moment, this power was added to the body of Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone. The Brontosaurus clone turned, and it was about to escape from the spell altar. However, the spell altar's light was profound and tyrannical, and it still firmly held onto the Brontosaurus clone. Even though this ritual was controlled by the great demon of Central Tribulation Yudu through the power of the world, it was still the remains of Yuwang's celestial sea. In terms of power, it was much stronger than Brontosaurus's clone. Even if Brontosaurus's clone executed Battle Universe Reversal, it would still be hard for him to escape safely. However, Lin Feng's face showed no signs of surprise. The Cosmos Reversal technique suddenly reversed, and the huge force did not push the Brontosaurus clone away from the altar. Instead, it rushed towards the inside of the altar, going against the flow. Meanwhile, his clone of the Divine God of Battle and his clone of Nine Qi channeled their energy into the Lightning Dragon clone at the same time. Combined, the three doppelgangers shouted in unison, and a vast amount of purple qi was generated from their bodies. The three streams of purple qi gathered together and formed a human figure, which looked very similar to Lin Feng. Although it was illusory, a vast amount of magic power was emitted from it. This illusory figure also kept on changing its hand seals, and a Taiji diagram rotated on its forehead. In the depths of the Taiji diagram, there was a true spirit divine rune of the demon race flashing with light. The void trembled once again, and more starlight surged. The Cosmos Reversal technique, which was even stronger than the power of the Brontosaurus clone, was executed by this illusory figure, and it shook the star orbits even further. The starry sky also had an even stronger feedback, and it continued to strengthen the Brontosaurus clone. This power did not help the Brontosaurus clone escape from the spell altar. Instead, it sent him further into the depths of the spell altar. However, this boundless power shook off the purple qi that had wrapped around the Brontosaurus clone. Even though it was only for a short instant, it allowed the Brontosaurus clone to not be assimilated by the spell altar when he rushed into it. After executing the Cosmos Reversal technique, the three human figures formed by the purple qi gradually dissipated, and the eyes of the Brontosaurus clone flickered continuously with purple light. The silver-white, huge dragon shuttled through the interior of the spell altar, and in an instant, it came to the center of the spell altar. Looking at the Yudu skeleton, the silver-white Brontosaurus suddenly opened its mouth and swallowed the skeleton in one gulp. The spell altar itself trembled, and the movement of merging into the boundless world suddenly stopped. The large amount of cracks in the boundaries under the spell altar also gradually healed. The black line that stretched out from the top of the spell altar changed its appearance, and it started to become a huge pillar of light again. The silver-white brontosaurus didn't have it easy either. The silver-white scales on the dragon's abdomen had completely turned purple, and there was an extremely dazzling purple light pouring out from them. It illuminated the clone of Lin Feng's brontosaurus until it was almost transparent. Its blood vessels and bones could be seen clearly, and it was as clear as colored glass. Meanwhile, the purple light was like a purple sun that shone continuously in the dragon's abdomen. From the abdomen of the brontosaurus clone, a voice suddenly came out. Doing this will only make it easier for me to use the remains of Brother Tianhai, Imperial Brother, to refine you into my clone. Then, I can continue to execute the ritual more smoothly. From a voice, it was the great demon of Yudu that had gotten into the calamity. As he said that, Lin Feng had already discovered that the Yudu skeleton in the brontosaurus clone's abdomen was extending out streams of light. They were like threads that stabbed into the flesh and blood of the brontosaurus clone's abdomen, coating the clone in a layer of purple light from the inside out. The Yudu skeleton seemed to have come to life, and it started to gradually fuse into the flesh and blood of the brontosaurus clone, fusing with the dragon bones of the brontosaurus clone. The brontosaurus clone gave off an unknown growl, and its appearance actually started to change. The dragon horns on its head disappeared, and instead, 3 horns that were the trademark of the Yudu race appeared. The huge dragon body started to change, and it gradually changed into a human form. However, it didn't change into the human form of Lin Feng. A silver-white mane appeared on the back of the giant, and the original dragon tail didn't disappear. However, the dragon scales on the tail disappeared, and a large amount of silver-white fur appeared instead. It turned into a huge tail that looked like a wolf's tail. Lin Feng's brontosaurus clone was actually changing into the appearance of a Yudu beast at this moment. This skeleton isn't your own after all, and the spell you are casting now is also being performed with a boundary between us. Lin Feng's battle god clone had a calm expression, and the 9-Chi clone beside him also had a calm expression. If either of these 2 conditions weren't met, the outcome of today's matter might have been different, but it's a pity that there are no ifs. The last one to speak was actually the clone of Brontosaurus, which was gradually changing into the appearance of Yudu. However, his voice still belonged to Lin Feng. Before he even finished speaking, the battle god clone and the 9-Chi clone raised their right palms at the same time, and they slashed at the Brontosaurus clone. Heavenly Realm Barrier. A mysterious barrier suddenly formed in the body of the Brontosaurus clone, and it instantly cut off the Yudu skeleton from refining the Brontosaurus clone. The skeleton and the dragon bones separated, and the threads that were connected to the flesh and blood of the dragon body were all severed. The silver-white mane on the surface of the Brontosaurus clone's body disappeared, and its appearance changed back from human form to dragon form. The 3 sharp horns on its head were gone, and the 2 horns that were unique to the dragon race reappeared. The purple light markings that covered its entire body also gradually disappeared, and only the dragon's abdomen still had large amounts of purple light flashing on the surface of its body. Stopping the other party's attempt at possession didn't mean that everything was fine for Lin Feng. The skeleton that the Brontosaurus clone had swallowed still had extremely powerful energy, and it seemed like it could explode at any time. The gaze of Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone was calm and determined, and the light around its body flashed violently. The Battle God clone and the 9-Chi clone executed their spells together, and waves of magic power landed on the Brontosaurus clone. A leisurely voice came from the skeleton. "You're right. In that case, I'll come over." Lin Feng's heart stirred slightly. He knew that the other party didn't come with his true body and cast the spell through the power of the World Zone. It was the final test of his Spirit Sea. Now that he understood that the Spirit Sea no longer had any restrictions on him, he no longer had any worries. The spell altar that was gradually dissipating suddenly solidified again and resonated with the skeleton inside the Brontosaurus clone. The spell altar instantly changed shape and turned into a triangular vertebra, locking the 3 clones of Lin Feng inside. The glowing triangular vertebra froze the void and the surrounding space as though it was a cage. Outside the triangular vertebra, the dark void in the distance started to tremble violently, as though the heaven and earth were collapsing. An extremely terrifying existence seemed to be descending. In infinite wasteland, Jade Capital Mountain was still facing off against the 12 sacred heavens, ingenious flower formation in the Spirit Abyss mountain range. On the mountain, the eyes of Lin Feng's true body flashed. In the void outside the realm, the battle god clone that was trapped in the triangular vertebra suddenly opened its mouth and sucked in a breath. A purple gas came out from the bodies of the Brontosaurus clone and the Nine-Chi clone. The purple gas was absorbed by the battle god clone, and in the next moment, the 3 clones all disappeared. The battle god clone was lured by Lin Feng's true body, and he forcefully broke through the world zone and came to the side of the true body on Jade Capital Mountain in Infinite Wasteland. He also swept the Brontosaurus clone and the Nine-Chi clone back. However, the other party's methods were also extraordinary. The purple light flashed, and the triangular vertebra that froze the heavens actually followed and suppressed the 3 great clones. In Lin Feng's mind, the appearance of the medium-sized world where the Yudu race resided appeared again. In the sky above Yudu, royal city, the strongest Yudu beast looked at him across the endless void, and its gaze became slightly more serious. Your methods are extraordinary. How do I address you? The Yudu beast looked at Lin Feng silently. Lin Feng said indifferently, I'm the master of Xian Gate, Lin Feng. I wonder who you are? The Yudu beast said, My name is Yudu 12 Illusory Sunday. He looked at Lin Feng. We will meet again very soon. Both sides clashed, and in the end it was a draw. He cast his spell through the power of the world zone, and Lin Feng's true body didn't descend. Lin Feng had destroyed his ritual to bring Yudu royal city back to the Great Thousand, and he had suppressed the 3 clones of Lin Feng. Before he could rush over and reactivate the ritual, Lin Feng had brought the skeleton and his clones back to his true body. However, the seal he had used on the 3 clones of Lin Feng was still there, and if Lin Feng wanted to resolve it, he wouldn't be able to complete it in a short period of time. The last exchange between both sides ended there. Lin Feng looked at the shrunken triangular vertebra in his palm, and he fell into deep thought. Illusory Sun, Yudu 12 Illusory Sun, the 12th clan master of the Yudu race? The spell altar erected by the skeleton of Yu Huang Tian Hai has 11 layers. Is it Yudu 11 heavenly seas? At the same time, in another world far away from the Spirit Abyss Mountain, a hole suddenly appeared in the void. As white light shone, a crack was forcefully torn open in the world of the vast thousand realms by a mighty expert. Chapter 1166. After the initial battle, the human experts quickly launched a counterattack. The flames of war spread from the Divine Land to Infinite Wilderness Land. The battlefield was mainly focused on the territory of the demon race. In the war between the 2 worlds, the situation was chaotic. Everyone was fighting for everything they wanted with their own abilities. Most of the previous scruples and order were thrown to the back of their minds. When experts with higher cultivation levels fought against those with lower cultivation levels, it would often result in a massacre. However, the higher the cultivation level, the fewer the number of experts. It was easier for them to be in a stalemate with each other, to the point of eventually exchanging pieces. Although the war between the 2 worlds was extremely chaotic, it did not mean that the top experts had completely lost their minds. Under such circumstances, the battles between the middle and lower level experts with slightly lower cultivation levels would be more intense. Violent battles were everywhere in other places, avoiding the battlefields of the top experts. On Infinite Wasteland, The domain passageway that connected to the southern border of the divine land of the human race had been completely occupied by the experts of the human race. A large number of experts of the human race poured into Infinite Wasteland and launched attacks on the demon race world, occupying some grotto heavens and blessed lands. Although they might not be able to occupy it for long, the spirit chi and various precious resources contained in it could be swept away. Relying on these front lines, the experts of the various forces of the human race continued to expand in all directions. From then on, they continued to head east for 10,000 kilometers and arrived at the entrance of infinite wilderness land that led to a medium-sized world. Looking through the realm passage, they could see volcanoes erupting under the gloomy sky, lava flowing out, and wild winds howling. The interior of the entire medium-sized world was covered in a layer of misty green light, exuding a strong, ferocious aura. A large number of human cultivators were attacking the medium-sized world. Although the spirit chi fluctuations were ferocious, there were many unique special resources in such an environment, such as spirit plants and minerals. In this medium-sized world, there were demons living there. They could not evacuate in time and were stuck there, fighting with the human cultivators. These demons were shaped like tigers. They had long fur, human faces, tiger feet, pig teeth, and long tails. They were ferocious, stubborn, and cruel, which was quite similar to the medium-sized world. This demon was actually one of the 4 primordial fierce beasts. This dimensional realm was one of the habitats occupied by the Bai. The Bayan that was younger and had a lower cultivation was protected by several Bayan kings using their monster strength. Then, these Bayan kings followed the Bayan kings that had formed their nascent souls and rushed out of this dimensional realm. There was even a Swanee amongst them that had shockingly attained an indestructible demon soul. However, it had suffered a heavy injury earlier, so it was difficult for it to utilize its strength at this moment. But even so, its ferocious demonic power and powerful physical body made the Yuanying stage cultivators very afraid. Under the leadership of the great Saint Taowu, a group of Taowu forcibly broke through the entrance of the domain passageway and was ready to escape into the distance. They didn't have any thoughts of defending this dimensional realm. More and more human powerhouses were setting foot in the vicinity. Once they provoked a primordial spirit powerhouse of the human race, or even more Yuanying cultivators, this dimensional realm would eventually fall. Most of the human cultivators besieging this place were cultivators of the Great Qin dynasty. At this moment, seeing these Bayan break through the encirclement, they were helpless. Killing these Bayan would bring them a harvest that was not inferior to the dimensional realm that had been developed for a long time and was gradually becoming barren. However, the other side had an indestructible demon soul, Bayan, as its leader. Even if the other side was seriously injured, if they wanted to kill it, they would have to pay a huge price, and they might even be buried with the other side. This caused the human cultivators to inevitably feel hesitant. But at this moment, a sword light suddenly flashed in the distant sky. The sword light arrived first, and then there was a thunderclap. The sword light was like a thunderbolt. In an instant, it arrived outside this dimensional realm. The thunderous sound of thunder resounded, causing everyone present to black out and almost faint. The Bayan's demon souls were even more unstable and on the verge of collapse. The resplendent lightning and sword light fused as one. Without saying a word, it slashed at the Bayan that had an indestructible demon soul. Lao Ai let out a loud roar, and the green light around his body surged to resist the sword light. However, he was seriously injured, and it was beyond his power to deal with this new and troublesome enemy. The sword light exploded like a thunderbolt, and the green light around his body was also blown to pieces. After all, the Bayan was fierce and its demon power was stubborn. It was difficult to get rid of it when it was used to attack, but it could produce an extremely strong defensive power when it was used to defend. Although the Bayan was seriously injured, it did not die after being struck by such a ferocious sword light that seemed like divine punishment from the heavens. And what appeared in front of him was a man who looked to be in his 30s or 40s. He held a long sword surrounded by lightning. It's Ben Lazy of the Thunderbolt Sword Sect. A cultivator of the Great Qin dynasty immediately recognized the person. He was another Essence Soul sword cultivator in the Thunderbolt Sword Sect besides the sect master, Thunderbolt Sword Venerable, Ben Lazy. Although it hadn't been long since he became an Essence Soul, his magical powers and sword cultivation were not to be underestimated. There was a deep grudge between the Thunderbolt Sword Sect and the Bayan tribe. At this moment, Ben Lazy's sword was merciless. Every strike of his sword released a bolt of lightning that could split the heavens and split the earth. A demon king, Bayan, could not dodge in time and was directly turned to ashes by Ben Lazy's fierce and violent sword light. The Bayan tribe had previously attacked the southern border of the Great Qin dynasty through the realm passageway. Now that the Great Qin dynasty saw that they had a chance to encircle and annihilate them, they naturally did not hold back and hurriedly followed to eliminate the Demon King, Bayan-S. In the distance, there were still lightning sword lights flashing. When they neared, they saw that it was the Yuanian cultivators of the Thunderbolt Sword Sect who had followed Ben Lazy here. Everyone attacked together. Bolts of lightning surrounded the surroundings, forming a lightning cage that surrounded the Bayan-S. The Bayan-S roared angrily and resisted with all their might. Ben Lazy cut off one of the great sage Bayan's hind legs. When he was about to attack again, his expression suddenly changed and he looked at the ground below. In the process of the battle, the ground, which had already been broken apart, suddenly shook violently. The huge earthquake caused the entire wasteland to be completely abandoned and shattered. However, under the broken ground, a ferocious demonic power soared up to the sky, directly sweeping away all the lightning in the world. An extremely ferocious monster snake rushed out from the ground. It had 1 head, 2 bodies, 6 legs, and 4 wings. It was a fae. When the fae appeared, the world instantly became dry. All the water evaporated, causing all the human cultivators present to feel suffocated. Ben Lazy's expression changed slightly. A fae of the primordial true spirit realm. However, this fae did not have much time to care about Ben Lazy and the Bayan-S. Instead, it was focused on escaping into the distance. However, its sudden appearance caught everyone off guard. Under its rampage, its violent, demonic power swept across, directly injuring many Yuanian cultivators present. Some Yuanian cultivators who happened to be in its way were directly swallowed by its demonic power. Their flesh and blood were all dried up and evaporated. Their divine soul and Yuanian were like cracked porcelain that was roasted and shattered together. Even Ben Lazy only had time to protect some of the sword cultivators of the Thunderbolt Sword Sect. But when the fae's demonic power swept across, he was also shaken back, and his primordial spirit became unstable. The fae fled. Behind it, 2 streams of light also rushed out from the ground. One of them was a black sword light meandering like a black river, following closely behind the fae. The one who merged with the sword light was a middle-aged man in black, wearing a crown and an embroidered robe. He was completely composed of light and shadow. It was King Jingfeng of the Great Qin dynasty, Shilin. He had manifested his void-returned Dharma body and was driving the Black River Sword, a transformation-level magic treasure, to chase after the fae. The person with him was a void-return realm expert of the Heavenly Sword Sect. Using the Great Way Heavenly Sword Sect, he was faster than Shilin and caught up with the fae in the blink of an eye. Shilin also followed closely behind. Together with the great sword cultivator of the Heavenly Sword Sect, they launched a pincer attack to kill this fae of the primitive true spirit level. Those by ANS were not in their line of sight. But with their powerful magic power, perhaps they might be wary of Ben Lazy and the others of the human clan, but they still swept those by NS into pieces. The already fierce battle instantly escalated. The wind and clouds in the sky changed. The ground below had collapsed into a huge basin, and cracks appeared in the sky. Whether it was Ben Lazy and the others or those by ANS, They could not care about the battle anymore and hurriedly avoided it. But at this moment, at the place where King Jingfeng of the Great Qin dynasty was fighting with the Fei, the void suddenly shattered, and the domain of the vast thousand world was forcibly torn open. The entire world was like a painting that had been torn apart by someone from the outside. The Fei and the expert from the Heavenly Sword Sect happened to be at the position of the gap. Before they could even react, the space where they were was torn apart, and their bodies were torn apart along with the gap. Sherlin, who was a little further away, opened his eyes wide, but he could only stare dumbfoundedly at the two experts of the same realm as him being killed just like that. Before they could struggle, resist, be angry, or panic, they were torn apart along with the vast thousand world. In the crack, the sky was full of purple light, which swallowed the bodies of the Fei and the expert of the Heavenly Sword Sect and dyed the world within a radius of thousands of miles purple. Within the range of the purple light, all creatures, whether human or demon, felt a tremor from the depths of their souls and could not help but shiver. Under the shroud of the purple light, many tall figures slowly walked out of the crack. As they landed, the surrounding world seemed to tremble, and the purple light became more and more domineering and majestic. Near the crack, there were cultivators or demons with lower cultivation, who were shown by the purple light, and their bodies were shattered into a mist of blood. Those tall figures seemed to be unaware of this, and they just looked down at the vast land of infinite region and the vast thousand world. The most powerful existence in the lead whispered, "Vast thousand world, we are back." Chapter 1167. Sherlin and Ben Lazy looked at everything that was happening in front of them in shock. The boundary of the boundless world was forcefully torn apart, and the crack seemed to surpass countless divine weapons in the world. It cut the Fei of the primordial true spirit realm and the great sword cultivator of the heavenly sword sect of the refined spirit returning realm into two. Light filled the sky from the crack, and the existences that walked out made them feel an irresistible terror from the depths of their souls. They all looked like humans, but they had triangles on their heads and sharp teeth that resembled dragons and wolves. Their backs were covered in long, silver-white fur, and a large tail dragged behind them. Their skin was covered in purple runes. This image was very unfamiliar to everyone present. They had never seen such beings with their own eyes. But after a moment of astonishment, a name that made their hearts heavy appeared in the depths of everyone's memories. Yudu. This race that had once ruled over the vast land of infinite wasteland and suppressed the great heaven primordial world had returned to the world after disappearing for 4,000 years. The strongest Yudu beast in the lead stood upright like a human. It had a medium build, and its gaze was calm as it swept across the vast world in front of it. It was the new clan master of the Yudu race, Mirage Yudu. Just by standing there calmly and doing nothing, he seemed to be the center of the entire world. He didn't intentionally show his power, but neither did he intentionally hide it. All the strong practitioners on the vast land of infinite wasteland could feel his existence and were shocked. Even in the mysterious sea, there seemed to be several consciousnesses trembling slightly. The top strong practitioners on the divine land could also vaguely feel this shocking power suddenly descending on the world. Behind Sun Mirage Yudu, there were 3 Yudu beasts standing side by side. They all stood upright like humans. 2 of them were taller, while the other one was skinnier. All of them had calm expressions. They seemed to have turned a blind eye to Sherlin, Ben Lazy, and the others, as well as some Tao in front of them. Just like Sun Mirage Yudu, they used their gazes to size up the world around them. Behind these 3 nether capital beasts, there were a few other nether capital beasts standing in front and behind. They were also sizing up the world of Tianhuang mainland, and the gazes of these nether capital beasts were much more domineering and passionate. Some nether capital beasts' gazes were filled with emotions and nostalgia, while others were filled with curiosity. But without exception, the gazes of all of Yudu were filled with aggression. Their gazes seemed to have solidified into substance, wanting to burn the world in front of them. Behind these Yuta beasts, there were other Yuta beasts that slowly walked out from the crack. Their cultivations were slightly lower, but all of them had surging demonic chi on them. They were peerlessly tyrannical, and it was a ghastly sight to behold. Sherlin and Ben Lazy didn't even have the time to carefully size up these Yuta beasts. After realizing who they were, they didn't even look back as they fled into the distance. But they didn't have this chance. Their coincidental appearance here today had already determined their fates. Mirage Sun Yudu and the three Yuta beasts beside him did not react at all. However, Yuta beast in the crowd behind them stretched out its claws and grabbed at the air. Purple light surged and engulfed the world, directly capturing Sherlin and Ben Lazy. As for the other surviving human cultivators whose cultivation base had not reached the nascent soul realm, under the pressure of his demonic power, they were also directly turned into a mist of blood. None of them survived. The human cultivators here all belonged to the Great Qin dynasty and the Thunderbolt Sword sect. When Sherlin and Ben Lazy saw this, they couldn't help but be enraged. However, their rationality told them that escaping was the most important thing right now. However, when he was grabbed by the Yudu beast's claws, Ben Lazy was instantly unable to move. The sword lights that were like lightning around him were like insignificant sparks, extinguishing once again before they could even light up completely. Ben Lazy was completely unable to maintain his human form. Under the pressure of the other party's demonic power, he directly manifested his primordial spirit incarnation, transforming into a long sword that was surrounded by lightning. As for the Yuta beast, it opened its mouth and sucked in his treasure, a spirit-nurturing level sword, and swallowed it in one gulp. Countless bolts of lightning exploded in the Yuta beast's mouth, but it didn't care at all. On the other side, Sherlin executed his void return Dharma body and completely fused with the Black River sword, which was a transformation-level treasure. His entire body twisted like a long black river. In the long river, a black light dragon stretched out. When the Yuta beast saw this, it couldn't help but laugh. "I've eaten a real dragon before, much less a fake one like you." The purple light markings on its claws surged and swept up the long black river along with the black light dragon. Then, the purple light transformed into millions of runes that spun continuously in the sky like a huge whirlpool. As the whirlpool stirred, it shattered the long black river and the light dragon. The Yudu beast opened its mouth and sucked, and the shattered black light transformed into a line that was sucked into the Yudu beast's mouth. The other Yudu beast beside him said indifferently, "Swallow the treasures as you like, but leave the primordial spirits of the humans behind. We've returned to the boundless world, and our information is severely lagging behind. If we want to extract information from their souls, one more person means one more piece of information." The Yuta beast that had attacked said, "Of course." After saying that, it opened its mouth and spat out a human figure. It was Sherlin's primordial spirit, but Sherlin's void return Dharma body had shattered, and the Black River sword was nowhere to be seen. Sherlin's face was ashen as he was squeezed in the claws of the Yuta beast along with Ben Lazy. After a short while, astonishment appeared on the Yuta beast's face. A few top practitioners of the Yuta race turned their heads to look at him. The Yuta beast said firmly, "The strongest practitioner of the dragon race now is the Tenryu Jin, who has successfully experienced a calamity. It's still uncertain if he has completely recovered from his weakened state. Other than the heavenly devil ape from back then, there's also the Zhuyan devil ape and the enchantress, whose origins are still a mystery. The only known demons in the Last Days realm are the phoenix in the Wutong forest, as well as golden cicada under extreme spirit of the divine abyss, heavenly dragon Kuan of the dragon race, and the 10,000 laws hard ape that has suddenly appeared. Now is the time of the war between the two worlds, and Taishu Temple has taken the initiative to bring the Hao Ian mirror into the mysterious sea. They are currently fighting with the dragon race in the mysterious sea," Mirage Sun Yudu said calmly. I can faintly feel that the Haotian mirror isn't in the boundless world, so it has entered the mysterious sea. That Yudu beast continued to say, in the recent years, a strong practitioner has suddenly risen in the human race, and his name is Master of Xian Sect. He has established Xianmin Tianzong, and now he is a power that can rival Taishu Temple in the Divine Land. The gazes of all the Yudu beasts flickered, and they recalled what had happened previously. Mirage Sun Yudu nodded his head. He's indeed not a simple person. He has arrived at the spirit abyss mountain of the monkeys, and he is currently facing off against the two monkeys and that heavenly enchantress. This Yudu beast continued to say, what we need to pay attention to the most is that he has a sword called Heaven Punishment. It's said that he can face off against the incomplete Haotian mirror, but he has never used it against the enemy. As for its exact abilities, there are still doubts. A tall and big Yudu beast beside Mirage Sun Yudu grinned. No wonder he can block those monkeys at Spirit Abyss Mountain. Beside him stood a Yudu beast that was relatively small and skinny. He was even smaller than most Yudu beasts on Union of Star Soul's realm and Primordial True Spirit realm. However, with every breath he took, his demonic energy shook heaven and earth, and no one dared to look down on him. This Yudu beast looked at Mirage Sun Yudu. What are you prepared to do? Are you going to participate in the war between the two worlds? Mirage Sunu said silently. Return to King City first. Someone needs to hold down the fort there. That Yudu beast that was much smaller and skinnier didn't feel that anything was wrong. His originally slightly furrowed brows relaxed, and he nodded his head. He turned around and returned to that crack, and it gradually closed up. Mirage Sun Yudu took a step forward and broke through the void, vanishing into the horizon. The great demons of Yudu behind him roared at the sky and followed closely behind him, disappearing into the void. The wasteland that had been fighting intensely not long ago suddenly quietened down. The purple light in the world had also dissipated, and only the sound of the wind could be heard. The humans and demons that had been fighting endlessly a moment ago had all disappeared, as if dust had been blown away. Far away in space, in another region of infinite wasteland, there was a huge cloud of light floating in the sky. On the cloud of light, there were many strange pavilions. This was where the ruler of the great Qin dynasty, Qin Emperor Stonefeather, had personally led his troops to conquer infinite wasteland. Qin Emperor Stonefeather stood there with a solemn expression as he looked into the distance. That direction was where King Jingfeng had fought with the Fae. Even though he was far away, Stonefeather, who was in infinite wasteland, could clearly feel the waves of demonic energy that shook the world. His heart sank. His younger brother, Lin, had most likely met with misfortune. Previously, after receiving the news from Lin Feng that the Yudu race might return to the boundless worlds, Stonefeather's heart had actually started to be on guard. While instructing the divine prefecture to be on guard, he also ordered the great Qin cultivators who were spread out to consciously return. King Jingfeng Stonefeather was actually on his way back when he suddenly encountered the battle between the strong practitioners of the Heavenly Sword sect and the Fae, so he helped along the way. King Anliang Stone Zhengyue stood beside Qin Emperor Stonefeather and said solemnly, Your Majesty, some of them are scattered to attack the medium-class worlds and the subordinates of the foreign dimension outside the boundless worlds. It's inconvenient to contact them. At the same time, their cultivation is lower, so it will take some time for them to rush back after receiving the warning. Stonefeather said slowly, Communication with Brother Lin has been cut off. Uncle, you should have felt that wave of demonic energy just now, right? Zhengyue's expression was solemn as he nodded slowly. Stonefeather looked into the distance and said slowly, The news from the Master of Xian Gate is accurate. The Yudu race has really returned to the world, and their strength is astonishing. It's hard to predict what they will do next. We should first stabilize our position and observe. Zhengyue bowed and replied, Your Majesty is wise. After a moment of silence, Stonefeather suddenly said, Summon Nebula to infinite wasteland and come to me. Nebula? Shirzonyue was slightly surprised, but he didn't ask further and agreed respectfully. At the same time, all the human forces were shocked. Thinking of Lin Feng's previous warning, they all stopped in their tracks and paid close attention to the development of the situation. Chapter 1168. The heaven primal world was filled with the flames of war. There were battles between peak experts, but in places where they could not reach, there were many battles of lower levels that were even more intense and bloody than the heaven primal worlds, where they were currently in full swing. In a foreign dimension, black shadows fluttered about in the sky while emitting deafening buzzing sounds that connected together into a deafening expanse. Huge, strange insects were flying in the air. They looked like huge beetles, with the largest being the size of a small mountain and the smallest being the size of a water tank. These strange beetles were known as black scorpions. They were completely black, but a long tail extended from the end of their huge abdomen. It was segmented, with the tip forming a hook like the tail of a scorpion. As these black scorpions danced in the air, there was a thick, bloody light circling around them. A large number of black scorpions gathered together, like a wave that blotted out the sky, pressing down on a mountain not far away from the entrance to the foreign dimension. Rings of light suddenly lit up on the mountain, enveloping the entire mountain. Each ring of light was formed from flickering white talisman characters, forming a ring. The talisman characters constantly flowed, and the rings of light constantly revolved as well. They gave off a perfect and flawless concept of power, forming a powerful defense. On the mountain stood a purple-clothed young man of medium build. His clothes were embroidered with a Taiji symbol, and there were 3 black horizontal lines on his sleeves, the same as the Qian trigram. This young man was none other than Xianmin Tianzong, the second-generation head of the Heaven Palace's direct disciples, Yang Tai. He was now a Yuanian cultivator, and some of his disciples had already condensed a golden elixir. When he walked outside, many people had to respectfully address him as true Lord Tiantai. He used Xianmin Tianzong's direct disciple, the heaven-returning law realm, and its defensive power was astonishing. Although the black scorpions outside were mostly demon commanders who had condensed their demon cores, there were hundreds and thousands of them. Their numbers were enough to cause a qualitative change, and there were even demon kings who had condensed their demon nascent. However, Yang Tai's expression was calm. He used his abilities to firmly protect the mountain beneath his feet, stopping the enemy's attacks. Beside him, the group of Qian Tian Palace True disciples all unleashed their own methods to attack the black scorpions. Although the black carapace of the black armored scorpion had good defensive power, facing Sun Shuer and the other direct disciples of the celestial sect of wonders, they were unable to resist. In a short period of time, it was as if they were being cut wheat. Sun Shuer stood beside Yang Tai. Her eyes were ice blue. Her left hand pinched a spell in front of her chest. Her right index finger and thumb clasped together, and her other 3 fingers form a knife. She slashed at the swarm of insects in the air. Water vapor that looked like ice appeared in the void, and snow began to fall from the sky. The entire world seemed to have taken on an icy blue hue. The temperature in the air dropped rapidly. Even the disciples of Xianmin Tianzong beside Sun Shuer, whose cultivation base was slightly lower, felt chills. The power activated by Sun Shuer was one of the 6 great true waters in the world, the extremely cold Xianming True Water. Unlike the Xianming True Water that was activated by the Yu clan's Xianming art in the past, Sun Shuer activated the Xianming True Water at this moment. The ice mist that was formed, aside from the extremely cold power, was even more profound in its foundation, and its power was even more vast. Sun Shuer's hand slashed across the sky. It was as if a rainbow formed from condensed ice souls was spread across the sky, emitting a 7-colored radiance. Many of the black armored scorpions were directly frozen by this ice rainbow. The originally tyrannical aura in their eyes immediately dimmed, and what was gradually extinguished was the brilliance of their lives. The Xianmin Tianzong disciples who were allowed to participate in the war between the two realms, at least before the situation was completely clear, were at least at the core formation stage. For them, although these black-armored scorpions were ferocious, the black-armored scorpions in the Demon Commander realm were not enough to be afraid of. The only problem was that the opponent's numbers were too large. Their attacks were like endless waves, and they pounced on them from all directions at the same time, causing them to be overwhelmed. In a situation like this, it was often impossible to counter every move, and it was impossible to carefully search for the opponent's weaknesses like in a normal battle. The most dangerous part was that when you defeated one, two, or even more opponents, it did not mean that you had won. It was very possible that in that instant, even more enemies would pounce on you and drown you. Or perhaps in a battle that seemed to be unrelated to you, one side would dodge, and the other side's attack that missed would suddenly appear in front of you, bringing the threat of death to you. All sorts of dangers were everywhere, and they were often unexpected and impossible to guard against. However, for these Xianmin Tianzong cultivators, they were not fighting alone. Beside them were fellow disciples or seniors of the same sect. They could leave their rear and flanks to these trustworthy people. They only needed to focus on dealing with the enemies in front of them and quickly, accurately, and ruthlessly kill the enemies in front of them. If they were careless, other enemies would take advantage of it, and these enemies would often be killed by their companions before they could even get close. However, there was no doubt that the situation was changeable and chaotic. In this place, everyone needed to be more focused and sharper. At this moment, Yang Tai's expression was calm and natural. He completely gave up on attacking and focused on defending. With him at the forefront, there were also a few Golden Elixir late-stage and Golden Elixir middle-stage cultivators among the second-generation direct disciples who were focusing on the Black Armored Scorpion King in the opponent's camp. This naturally reduced the pressure on the others. Under such circumstances, Yang Tai, Sun Xuer, and the others were also happy to let the other Xianmin Tianzong disciples hone their skills and increase their experience and strength. Among the third-generation disciples, Yuan Yu and Yuan Li are both performing well. Sun Xuer waved her right hand, and an ice rainbow crossed the sky, directly freezing an early-stage Demon King Black Armored Scorpion King. She slightly tilted her head and looked at Yang Tai. Yang Tai nodded. Although still a little immature, they are improving very quickly. The third-generation direct disciples of Xianmin Tianzong were all Yuan generation. Yuan Yu and Yuan Li were Yang Tai's direct disciples, and their Taoist names were Yi Xinhui and Su Miaoying respectively. Yi Xinhui's hair and beard were all snow white. He formed a seal with his hands, and his whole body was also flashing with snow-white brilliance. This brilliance actually faintly formed the shape of a treasure tree in the void. Although the crown of the tree was not large and only covered a radius of a few dozen feet from this snow-white treasure tree, there were constantly snowflake-like lights floating down, flying in all directions, landing on the other cultivators of the celestial sect of Xian, making the degree of their magic power circulation more convenient. In a real battle, even the slightest difference could bring about a huge change. Although Yi Xinhui did not attack, the overall effect on the battle situation was faintly more effective than the effect of an early-stage Golden Elixir disciple of Xianmin Tianzong. The martial uncles and senior and junior brothers beside him were clearly prepared. They firmly protected Yi Xinhui, so he did not have to be distracted. As for Su Miaoying, when she fought, it was easy for Yang Tai and Sun Xuer to see Su Yunqing's shadow in her. Stable but not lacking in sharpness, she had few flaws and was both good at offense and defense. Even in this obviously chaotic environment, she was still meticulous. She took one step and looked 3 steps ahead. And when it was necessary to fight fiercely, she did not lack courage and determination. She was decisive and knew when to advance or retreat. Compared to Su Yunqing in the past, as a woman, Su Miaoying's style was even more radical. Her facial features were at least 70% similar to Su Yunqing's. Her handsomeness had turned into elegance, but her eyes were firm and resolute, with a hint of stubbornness. Sun Xue'er smiled faintly. She doesn't want others to take care of her because of senior brother Yun Sheng. Senior brother Yun Sheng has been away for many years, which has accumulated a lot of doubts in her heart. However, these doubts have turned into expectations and motivation. This is all the result of your careful teaching, Tai. Yang Tai shook his head slightly. It is the result of Yuan Ying's own hard work. I dare not take credit for it. Sun Xue'er looked to the other side. Speaking of which, although Yuan Yu and Yuan Ying's cultivation is not ordinary, among the third-generation direct disciples of our Qiantian Palace, Yuan Xing is still the first. Although senior brother Ying Luoz's teaching method is criticized, the results are indeed remarkable. There was a young woman with a cold expression. She was dressed in purple, and she was Ying Luoz's disciple, Meng Honglu. Among the third-generation direct disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, she was the first to form her gold core. Because she was the first to form her gold core, her Taoist name was originally Yuan Chu. Later on, under Meng Honglu's own request, her Taoist name was changed to Yuanxing, which implied that knowledge and action were one, and that what she said must be done. She had always kept her initial goal of becoming the first person among the third-generation direct disciples in mind. Looking at the black scorpions dancing in front of her, Meng Honglu suddenly pulled back the large bow in her hand, and with a backward posture, she released an arrow. A burst of starlight suddenly shot out, exploding in midair. It was as if a group of stars had fallen, covering the heaven and earth, killing more than 10 black scorpions at once. This was a special reward she had received from the sect as the first person to form her gold core in the third generation. It was a Yuanying realm magic tool, the meteor bow. With a single arrow, it was extremely destructive against demon commanders. This bow was very mysterious, and it was very difficult for Golden Elixir period cultivators to control it. However, in Meng Honglu's hands, it was like an extension of her arm. A black scorpion suddenly approached her from the other side. Meng Honglu held the bow with one hand, and her posture did not change. She suddenly stretched out her other hand, easily grabbing the black scorpion's tail, and swung it with force. As the black scorpion lost its balance, the giant bow in her left hand chopped down like a large knife, directly killing the black scorpion. Meng Honglu's expression did not change. She casually threw away the black scorpion's corpse and then pulled the meteor bow again. Yang Tai glanced at her and sighed slightly. It cannot be popularized, and I have no intention of popularizing it. Hearing this, Sun Xue'er's face also revealed a slightly bitter smile. At this moment, the swarm of insects in the distance suddenly became restless. A violent force shattered the void, and a black light flashed, instantly stabbing a black scorpion king that had formed its demon infant to death. In the midst of the chaos, the swarm of insects hurriedly diverted their attention to deal with the new enemy. Yang Tai and Sun Xue'er looked at each other, and they could not help but smile. Chapter 1169. A spot of black light flashed and stabbed a black scorpion king that had formed a demon infant to death. In the next moment, this spot of black light suddenly spread between heaven and earth and turned into a rain of light. Each dark and gloomy raindrop killed a black scorpion. In an instant, the black swarm of black scorpions was directly emptied. Even the fierce and fearless black scorpions lost their spirit and scattered to the side. A young man of medium stature, but with blood and qi surging all over his body like a furnace, appeared in the void and appeared in front of everyone. He held a jet-black long spear in his hand, and his killing intent soared to the sky. The young man's appearance and temperament were not bloodthirsty and violent, but instead gave people a sense of calmness. When Yang Tai and Sun Xue'er saw him, they both smiled and said, "Senior brother Zhao." The person who came was Xianmen Tianzong's second-generation Snow Wind Valley head, Zhao Huan. When Zhao Huan saw Yang Tai and Sun Shuer, he also smiled and said, "We're a bit late than scheduled. Sorry about that." Behind him were Ku Jing and the other Snow Wind Valley true disciples. Each of them used their magical powers to kill the black scorpions that approached them. Most of the Snow Gale Valley disciples were martial adepts, so they fought in close combat against the black armored scorpions. Other than Zhao Huan and a few others, most of the Snow Gale Valley disciples only focused on one black armored scorpion at a time. At first glance, the efficiency seemed low, but wherever they passed through, the black armored scorpions would really die upon contact. The entire team was like a giant mill, crushing everything in its path, sweeping away everything in its path. Yang Tai shook his head and said, "It's okay. We'll wait for you here. Everyone can also go through some training." He looked at the swarm of black scorpions in front of him and said, "These black scorpions are not extraordinary individually, but their numbers are huge and they cooperate well. When they gather together, the threat is quite considerable." The black scorpions in front of them formed a vast sea of black scorpions that stretched as far as the eye could see. At this moment, the Xianmen Tianzong cultivators gathered here, and the people from Qiantian Palace and Snow Wind Valley Cave Abode added up to only a few dozen. With such a huge advantage in numbers, even the Xianmen Tianzong disciples had to be cautious. Zhao Huan and the others did not blindly charge forward after their initial irresistible force. Instead, they met up with Yang Tai and the others. The black scorpions regained their footing and quickly launched an even more ferocious attack. Zhao Huan had also entered the Yuanying state and stood side by side with Yang Tai. One attacked, and the other defended, taking on the greatest pressure from the black armored scorpions in front of them. However, he mainly focused on the black armored scorpion kings, leaving the other black armored scorpions to the Xianmen Tianzong disciples in the Golden Elixir period to deal with. Everyone guarded this lonely mountain, seemingly isolated and defenseless, but the camp was firmly rooted and did not retreat even half a step. On the contrary, the black armored scorpions suffered heavy losses. Amidst the cries of the sea of insects, the red light grew thicker and thicker. More and more black armored scorpion kings appeared from afar, joining the ranks of the group that attacked Yang Tai, Zhao Huan, and the others. Seeing this, Yang Tai was not surprised but smiled. This time, almost all of them have come out. As he spoke, the fierce offensive of the swarm suddenly retreated a little, and then a large number of demonic insects gathered together, as if forming a huge pattern. The red light on this pattern flowed, becoming more and more fierce. Sun Shuer shouted to Yang Tai. Yang Tai nodded. "I know." As he spoke, he took out a small square shield, which was his Yuanying period magic tool, the defensive shield. The defensive shield lit up and at the same time extended on all sides, condensing into 4 flashing white corners, making the whole shield look like an upright square. Then, another layer of light covered the shield and continued to extend outwards, turning into a larger upright square. In this cycle, the light continued to expand, also making the shield bigger and bigger, covering the whole mountain behind it. Meanwhile, Yang Tai pinched a spell with both hands, and the central earth divine light and mixed element true water appeared at the same time. Then, he put his hands together and turned into the central sealed realm of mixed element. The light was as heavy as the earth, and the light as vast as the ocean spread out, combining with the defensive shield to protect Xianmen Tianzong and the others. Sun Shuer and other disciples of the Qiantian Palace, who had a higher cultivation base, also activated the magical power of the defensive shield at the same time. Halos of light fell on the defensive shield. Almost at the same time, a bright red light shot out from the huge rune formed by the black armored scorpions. It instantly tore through the void and bombarded the defensive magic shield. The demon power of the many demonic insects combined, and the huge force blasted the defensive shield that was supported by the central sealed realm of mixed element, causing it to shake continuously. Yang Tai's expression was calm, and his eyes were firm as he supported the celestial device and spell. But Zhao Huan did not say much. White light shone on top of his head, and in the center of the white light was a shining crown. Above the crown, two shadows were projected, one of which was dignified and sacred, and the other was evil and domineering. This was the legacy celestial device of the Snow Wind Valley's Yuanying stage, the ghost deity Golden Crown, given to him by Yu Hongyan. The black spear in Zhao Huan's hand was another Yuanying stage celestial device, the Heaven's Wrath Spear, given to him by Yu Hongyan as the second-generation true disciple. With the support of the ghost deity Golden Crown, Zhao Huan's power surged, and he was like a demon. The black Heaven's Wrath Spear in his hand shook, and he stepped on the void, moving from behind the defensive shield to in front of the swarm of insects. The nine heavens' formless astral wind, which was as sharp as a blade, combined with the bone-chilling Xianming true water that froze the void. It turned into a snowstorm, and as Zhao Huan stabbed with his spear, it tore through the void, heading straight for the strange talisman formed by the swarm of insects. Wherever the tip of the spear passed, the air was heated up by the friction, and one could even see the sparks of fire. But almost at the same time, it was extinguished by the snowstorm. In this spear, there was only the bone-chilling coldness and the biting cold storm. Compared to the gigantic talisman that covered the sky and covered the sun, Zhao Huan and the Heaven Wrath Spear. The tip of the Heaven Wrath Spear seemed incomparably small, but as Zhao Huan stabbed forward, the void distorted as though it was about to shatter the entire talisman. The talisman formed by the swarm of insects immediately flashed with red light, forming a barrier in front of it to block Zhao Huan's spear. Wen's Sun Shuerer, who was behind the Heaven Reversal Shield, saw this. She immediately stopped the Heaven Reversal Realm Divine ability and took out a scroll. As the pages of a scroll flipped, a large amount of icy cold mist surged out. The icy blue water droplets were like spirits of ice. It was hard to count, and all of them were Xianming True Water. Under Sun Shueter's control, the Xianming True Water fused into Zhao Huan's Wind Snow Divine Spear. Zhao Huan did not stop it. He swept up Sun Shuer's Xianming True Water, and he further activated the Nine Heavens' formless astral wind. The acupoints all over his body vibrated, as if volcanoes were erupting. His powerful body's qi and blood were pushed to the extreme, and the power of the Wind Snow Divine Spear increased once again. With this ferocious attack, the corner of the huge talisman suddenly shattered. Although the black-armored scorpions did not suffer many casualties, the strange formation could not be maintained for a while. After Zhao Huan's spear attack, he flipped over and returned to Yang Tai's side. Yang Tai also smiled and put away the defensive heaven shield. After the black-armored scorpions suffered such a heavy blow, some of their spirits were immediately dampened, and some became even more violent, rushing towards Yang Tai, Zhao Huan, and the others. But although they were violent, they were even less threatening than before. Yang Tai, Zhao Huan, and the others relax again. They controlled the intensity of the black-armored scorpions' attacks, and then let their fellow disciples in the Golden Elixir period practice with these black-armored scorpions. Where is senior brothering Rosa? The long spear in Zhao Huan's hand turned into a black light, piercing through space, directly stabbing a black-armored scorpion king to death, and then asked casually. Yang Tai smiled slightly. To catch bandits, first catch the king. Senior brother Ing Rosa went to find the leader of this group of black-armored scorpions. After that incident just now, he should be found soon, right? In a swarm of black-armored scorpions, there would be a leader, but in this swarm of black-armored scorpions, there were no great sage demonic insects with indestructible demon souls. The strongest ones were the insect kings. The insect king leader was more cunning and good at concealing itself, suppressing a portion of its magic power. From the outside, it did not stand out, making it difficult to recognize. It seemed that the formation of the insect swarm just now was under the command of this leader. If the leader didn't die, even if the formation was temporarily defeated, it could quickly regroup. However, if the leader, the black armored scorpion, was killed, even if another powerful black armored scorpion became the new leader, it would take a long time to unify the swarm and establish a connection. Time was not tight, and in consideration of training their fellow disciples with lower cultivation bases, Yangtai, Ingrosa, and the others had let the insects swarm wreak havoc, but they still had to do what they had to do. Ingrosa was used to being alone, and his escape technique, the wolf movement technique, was extremely exquisite. Other than being fast, he was also good at concealment, so he left the lonely mountain alone. Silently lurked, he observed the insects swarm and went to find the insect king. In the overwhelming sea of insects, there were no special waves, and the numerous black-armored scorpions were actually unable to find Rose's whereabouts. Zhao Huan shook her head and praised. Senior brother Rose's wolf movement technique is truly marvelous. This black-armored scorpion race must have at least a demonic insect with an indestructible demon soul to be able to see his whereabouts. As she spoke, Zhao Huan's expression suddenly changed slightly, and the expressions of Yang Tai, Sun Xuer, Ke Jing, and the others gradually became solemn. The Yudu race has returned to the boundless world. The younger disciples of Xianmin, Tianzong, all frowned slightly. Although none of them had truly seen the power of Yudu, as the direct disciples of the celestial sect of wonders, they naturally knew what this news meant. And Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan, who had informed them of the news, also gave the order to temporarily retreat and observe the subsequent changes. Although they could not be sure what the Yudu race would do when they returned to the boundless world, the younger disciples with lower cultivation still had to be careful. If they were not careful, they would be swept by the tail of the typhoon, and that would be too unjust. Zhao Huan and Yang Tai looked at each other and nodded. In that case, let's not waste time with these insects. Let's end this quickly. At the same time, a voice suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Then I'll make my move. This voice belonged to Rosa, and before he finished speaking, a knife light shone in the distance. Chapter 1170. Rosa's voice suddenly rang out in everyone's ears, and with his voice, a bright blade of light suddenly flashed in the depths of the insect swarm in the distance. The blade of light was resplendent and bright, but it was not eye-catching, causing people to unwittingly overlook it. This contradictory quality was perfectly displayed on the blade of light. The blade of light was like a fleeting swan, disappearing in the blink of an eye. In the depths of the insect swarm, a huge black scorpion king let out a terrified howl. It wanted to dodge, but the blade of light locked onto it, making it impossible to dodge. As the Scorpion King howled, many demon commander-level black scorpions involuntarily rushed up and clustered in front of it, wanting to block this sure-kill strike for it. However, the blade of light flashed again and again, passing through these black scorpions and accurately landing on the Scorpion King. This black Scorpion King was the leader of this swarm of insects. The moment before the blade of light arrived, it still wanted to gather the power of the insect swarm and condense a giant talisman to defend itself. But the blade of light was like mist and lightning. It was unbelievably fast, passing through space in an instant to kill it, giving it no time to react. Instinctively, the majestic demon chi that the Scorpion King had been hiding all this time erupted. It was indeed stronger than the other black Scorpion Kings. The thick red light almost condensed into a solid substance, wrapping around the Scorpion King like a thick layer of armor. The red light gradually condensed into a strange talisman, exactly like the talisman that the insect swarm had condensed earlier, except it was much smaller. However, at this moment, the talisman also revealed extremely powerful defensive power. However, all of this was just a final struggle before death. The blade of light was astonishing and disappeared in a flash. When the blade of light completely disappeared, the black Scorpion King's body had already exploded with rays of bloody light. Its huge body had been directly pierced through, and both its demon body and demon soul had perished. Faced with this sudden change, the huge swarm of insects fell into a slight daze. The originally deafening buzzing sound also came to an abrupt stop at this moment, and there was a strange silence between heaven and earth. Amidst the swarm of insects, in an empty space surrounded by black armored scorpions, a thick black smoke suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It rose into the sky like a mournful smoke signal. The black smoke gradually dissipated, revealing a dark-skinned and skinny young man whose facial features clearly bore the characteristics of a prairie native. He wore a purple tight suit and had a calm expression on his face, but his eyes clearly flashed with a dangerous light. He raised his right hand nonchalantly and opened his palm. A ray of light flashed in the void, and a pure black flying knife, less than a foot long, flew out from afar and returned to the young man's hand. The young man looked at the dead black armored scorpion king in the distance, and a faint sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. You're not much better than the other black armored scorpion demon kings, but you're able to become an authoritative leader. Is it because of your bloodline and status, or is it the nature of your race that you must have a leader? This young man was naturally Irosa. He had been hiding in the swarm earlier, surrounded by black armored scorpions. Even when the swarm had formed a formation and condensed into a giant talisman, he had been included in it, but not a single black armored scorpion had discovered his whereabouts. Now that they saw Irosa, the swarm fell silent for a moment, then suddenly became chaotic. It was both anger and panic after losing their leader. But at this moment, most of the black armored scorpions rushed towards Irosa with monstrous momentum, like a tsunami that wanted to drown him. Irosa's expression was calm, without the slightest hint of panic. There was a faint sneer at the corner of his mouth as he calmly looked at the rampaging swarm in front of him. The moment his knife flashed, Yang Tai, Zhao Huan, and the others on the lonely mountain also acted decisively without the slightest hesitation. Yang Tai no longer defended. Instead, he formed a spell with his left hand and pointed to the sky with his right hand. Suddenly, a black light flew into the sky. An extremely violent and ruthless aura surged in the void. As the black light flowed, it wrapped around a 7-inch-long black iron shuttle, which emitted waves of bloody, killing intent. Yang Tai was the second-generation true seat of the Qian Tian Palace. Zhu Yi had given him 2 Yuanying first seat magic treasures, one of which was used for defense, and the other was the Annihilation Shuttle. The Annihilation Shuttle was a further enhancement of Yang Tai's own magical power on the basis that he was good at defense. And this Annihilation Shuttle was specially used for frontal attacks. The only function of this treasure was to destroy and kill. Apart from that, it had no other uses, and its offensive and destructive power was among the top of all the Yuanying first seat magic treasures in the world. Yang Tai summoned the Annihilation Shuttle, formed a spell with his left hand, and with a wave of his right hand, an overwhelming black light swept towards the swarm of insects. One after another, black light exploded in the sky, killing black armored scorpions one after another. When Yang Tai was still in the Golden Elixir period, the Annihilation Shuttle had great power. Now that he had formed his nascent soul, he could use this weapon to the fullest. The swarm of insects couldn't form a formation, so the weaker black armored scorpions could only gather around the Insect King to resist. But as he summoned the Annihilation Shuttle, Yang Tai put his palms together and chanted, "Immeasurable light, immeasurable darkness, the beginning of the 2 poles, the creation of the heavens." Black and white light flew out with him as the center. The black and white light instantly turned into a huge altar that looked like a mandala flower, but was not a mandala flower. Countless bright and dazzling rays of light intertwined with countless dark and deep black lines, forming lines that looked like the orbit of the stars in the sky. Together, they weaved an independent small world. This was the light and dark mandala heaven's boundary inherited from Zhu Yi. Under the oppression of this light and dark boundary, The situation of the black armored scorpions became more and more difficult, and the lethality of the Annihilation Shuttle was further released. At the same time, Zhao Huan and the others did not stay idle. Everyone instantly turned from defense to offense. All kinds of powerful magical powers burst out with Lonely Mountain as the center, sweeping the surrounding heaven and earth, killing a large number of insects in front of them. Rosa, who was originally in the center of the swarm and facing the crazy counterattack of the black armored scorpions, became the most relaxed person. He grinned and changed his hand gestures. With him as the center, magical power condensed into purple brilliance, manifesting in the void. Although it was light and shadow, it was very clear, as if it was real. As Rosa pointed his finger, the light on the 4 big ox hairs suddenly became dazzling, and then there were rays of light shooting in all directions, causing great damage to the black armored scorpions with the momentum of a flower in the center, setting off a bloody storm. The black armored scorpions with high cultivation did not lack intelligence. Although the sudden death of their leader caused them to fall into a short period of chaos, they quickly recovered. However, the black armored scorpions of the Demon King realm all had their own mountains, causing the swarm to inevitably fall into a situation of division in a short period of time. It was difficult for them to work together like before. Although the swarm was divided and the size of each swarm was greatly reduced, if the leader could use his own demon power to unite with the demon insects under his command, they still had the power to fight. However, this needed time, and Yang Tai, Rosa, Zhao Huan, and the others obviously would not give these black armored scorpions time. In just a moment, the divided swarm was like a receding tide, beginning to disperse in different directions. If it had been the original plan, Yang Tai and the others would have carried out a further hunt, as well as going deep into the foreign space in front of them to search for all kinds of resources. But now that they had received the magical power transmission from Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyin, they no longer delayed. After killing the swarm of insects, they began to retreat from the foreign space. Rosa narrowed his eyes, revealing an expression of interest. The Yuta race? They have disappeared for more than 4,000 years, and now they have popped up again. Zhao Huan said from the side, "This is Grandmaster's warning. It can't be wrong." Also, it is said that this generation's master of Yudu has already experienced the middle tribulation. There are also many other great demons of Yudu, and they're all extremely powerful. After a slight pause, Zhao Huan continued, "According to Grandmaster's judgment, if we don't take into account the power of the Xianhai, the Yudu race's overall strength is above that of the dragon race. They are currently the strongest race in Tianwang continent." Rosa had a faint smile on his face. "In that case, we humans are not the only ones who should be concerned about them. The other demon races, such as the dragon race, will probably also feel a headache, right?" Yang Tai said, "That will depend on the specific situation. Although the demon races are wary of each other and view each other as enemies, it is not impossible for them to work together. There are also many silent tacit understandings in private. To the demon race, the incomplete Haoyan mirror leaving White Cloud Mountain to enter the Xianhai is also an extremely rare opportunity. The dragon race has always been arrogant, so it is hard to predict what they will do in the future." As they spoke, they had already left the foreign dimension and returned to the boundless world. Zhao Huan said, "No matter what, let's meet up with Master and Second Uncle Master first before we talk." Rosa asked, "Where are Master and Fourth Uncle Master now?" Zhao Huan replied, "They should have gone to chase after the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, but after receiving Grandmaster's warning, they stopped and are now returning to the Guxing Mountain area." The Guxing Mountain was a mountain range near the realm passage between the Divine Land and Tianwang continent. It was originally a place where the demon race had gathered, but after the attack of the human cultivators, the demon race had all dispersed. Rosa's expression suddenly changed, and he turned to look at Yang Tai with a smile. "If I remember correctly, fellow Taoists of Purple Cloud Tao should be near the Guxing Mountain, right?" Yang Tai seemed to have thought of something, and there was an imperceptible wry smile on his face. Yes, Zhao Huan, Sun Xuerer, and the other disciples of the same generation who were close to him also smiled. Sun Xuerer said with a smile, "I heard that senior sister Xiaolan is also here." The wry smile on Yang Tai's face became even more obvious. He nodded and said, "Yes, she is with Uncle Master Gu and Uncle Master Li. They are the only cultivators of the golden elixir period of Purple Cloud Dao who are participating in the battle, but they are mainly spectators and rarely participate in the battle. Uncle Master Gu and the others want to let senior sister Xiaolan and the others gain experience." Seeing his expression, the others finally realized that something was wrong and couldn't help but look at each other. Evening Rosa had a curious look on his face. "What's wrong with you?" You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.